successors according to law. So help me God.
It's happened before, but it is nonetheless still rather extraordinary that somebody who was only elected or officially sworn in as an MP less than 24 hours ago, in 3 weeks' time, is going to be running the country.
Yes, I think it is rather extraordinary. I think the issue isn't whether someone like that should automatically have to hold a general election. If Andy Burnham wants to introduce major changes to our constitution, he's talked about overhauling the House of Lords. He's also talked about overhauling our electoral system, bringing in some form of PR. I think if he wants to do any of those things, he needs a mandate from the public to do them. To try and do them without calling an election, I think, would be a constitutional outrage.
I've got an interesting tweet. There's always a tweet, Julia.
Yep.
If I can just read this out.
Yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Wednesday morning, it's Talk, the home of common sense. This is Duncan in for Julia Hartley-Brewer. Hope you're well. Thank you for sticking us on. 0344 499 1000. You need that number for your calls. Also, your WhatsApps and indeed your voice note messages. Really, really important because there's a ton of stuff going on today. My guest over the next 3 hours is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. We're going to do all kinds of things on the show today. We have a press conference from Reform UK at around 10:30 this morning. We'll take that live on the show, so you're fully in the loop and fully up to date. And of course, it's Keir Starmer's final Prime Minister's questions in the chamber of the House of Commons at midday. We will take that live as well. I wonder how it's going to go. I wonder if Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, is going to be kind, maybe leave Starmer alone and get in some early blows towards Andy Burnham. Anyway, you'll hear it here on Talk at around midday. Now, there's a little theme on our show this morning, and I'll tell you what the theme is about, because there's a raft of news stories and announcements, and there's a common denominator, right? We got this idea that junk food adverts outdoors, all of them should be banned to tackle obesity. There's a key word there, banned. We also have this story that you will have heard about over the last few hours of a social media midnight curfew for teenagers aged 16 and 17. There's a key word there. The word is curfew. We'll get to that in a second, because it seems preposterous to me that you have a government saying, let 16 and 17-year-olds vote. However, when it comes to midnight and they might want to check social media to look at the result of an election, you won't be allowed on it, because we don't think you can be trusted. And we also have a government quango. This is, I think it's Active Travel England, who sort of like, they influence the Department for Transport, government department, and they're quite keen, and I'd love your thoughts on this, if you're someone who listens to Talk in a rural part of the United Kingdom. They want rural roads, which is not the easiest of things to say, to have their speed limits cut to 20 miles per hour. So a lot of these country lanes, I mean, I live in the wilds of Sussex, right? A lot of these country lanes are 60 miles per hour. And there's this quango, because that's what they are, who are saying, no, we ought to cut the speed limit to 20 miles per hour. Do you want to know why? In order to protect cyclists. Now, so if you look at all of these things, banning, curfews, restrictions, and we also have this story that we're going to look at in more detail later on in the show of a council in Portsmouth. It's Portsmouth City Council. It's a Lib Dem council, so it won't come as any great surprise when you discover that they removed a St George Cross flag from outside a flat. Do you want to know why? And this is, apparently, it contravenes their fire safety policy in the city, which is kind of bizarre, isn't it? Because if you look at Talk earlier today when Jezza was on, and if you look at any of the pictures outside of Downing Street at the moment, what have they got outside Downing Street? They have lots of bunting. They have St George Cross flags. Clearly, a fire policy doesn't apply to Downing Street. So this is my question to you this morning here on Talk. Has the nanny state gone too far? When should the government stop telling you and me how to live our lives? I just take a very simple viewpoint on this. Just leave us alone. Just give us the information to make an informed choice, because we're grown up and we're adults. 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApps and your voice notes. We will play them out. You can text as well. It's 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Conservative commentator Benedict Spence in the studio. Morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. How's your morning been so far?
It's all right.
Yeah.
I haven't been apprehended by a police officer for saying or doing something untoward.
Is that a normal thing that happens to you then?
Well, there's a whole one St George's flag in my street at the moment,
Right.
and I'm wondering at some point they're going to start knocking door to door to say who's responsible for putting this thing up.
Yeah,
And, you know, suspicion might fall on me, I suppose.
Or maybe a Chinook helicopter hovering overhead with some SAS guys abseiling down in order to remove the flag and to apprehend the person responsible.
At least I'd know then that we were spending some money on defence, so that
Very
might be
true
positive.
indeed. I mean, you heard me just go through this litany of stuff, and I was on the train coming in earlier, I was reading all of these stories, and I think, just leave us alone, stop banning things, stop trying to implement a curfew, stop saying, oh, well, you know, we should have a greater restriction on speed limits on rural roads. What's your take on this?
Well, obviously I'm opposed to most of these things, but the problem is the majority of people in this country are not. The majority of people actually are quite keen on things being banned, but it's usually for other people, and that is a sort of a strange cultural dilemma that we have in this country, which is that everybody believes that they know best and that their way of life is completely fine, and that it's the other people, it's all everybody else, they need the state to come down hard on them.
Yeah.
And I think until people are able to square the inconsistency there, these things are going to keep on happening. I mean, let's take the curfew, the idea of that, as a starting point. Most people believe that social media is a bad thing for children. They believe that the internet is a bad thing for children.
Yeah.
Rather than take away the smartphones or the laptops themselves, because that would require personal agency, they want the state to intervene. That way they can have their cake and eat it. They're not the ones taking away the gadgets from their kids, so the kids don't say, I hate you, and stamp off somewhere else. So that makes life a little bit easier, and they can blame somebody else for this outcome. That's the kind of situation that we have.
When did you think this transfer of responsibility from what I would call proper parenting to the state started to happen?
1776.
Give us a history lesson.
Genuinely, I think that this is... I'm a firm believer, actually, in this sort of general idea, which is that the more slightly liberal-minded people of this country have by and large emigrated. A lot of them, the people with that kind of tendency, went. I think that these things are cultural, but there is also something in the genes of people. I think that this sort of tendency gets passed down. Those who are bold and more likely to make things happen, and those are more safety-minded and tended to happen. I think on the one hand, a lot of those people have emigrated, have left this country. I think an awful lot of them also died in the First World War because they were the ones that went over the top first. Genuinely, I think that there's a lot to be said about the not recent history of this country, but having stamped out a certain feeling of what it was to be this free-minded English or British person. I think a lot of that is gone, and actually this is why I say I think the majority of people are in favour of these things. Now, a lot of people who listen to this station
Benedict,
will not be.
It's really depressing, isn't it?
It is depressing.
It's fundamentally depressing.
It is fundamentally depressing, and this is why I say on so many issues, this country has to reach a certain point before people realise and remember, oh, actually, no, this isn't the direction I want to go in. I think there's still an assumption, and I think it is born of that kind of safety-first, placid, quite, sort of laid-back attitude, which is that, oh, it'll all be fine because somebody else is going to make sure that it's fine. That's the key thing. Somebody else is going to deal with this. Somebody else is going to come and make it all better. We haven't got to the point yet where the majority of people wake up and realise, oh no, you actually have to take some agency over your own life. You have to vote for sensible politicians, not ones that just promise you everything. You actually have to be the proactive people. Until we get to that point, things are going to gradually get worse.
Do you think we can actually get back to where we used to be? Certainly, for example, I know I'm going to sound like an old git. When I was a kid,
back in the good old days.
The good old days. Yes. Yeah, what's the matter with the good old days? You know, a lot of progressives. Well, a lot of progressives just go, oh, you shouldn't refer to the past. It wasn't that good. Well, I thought it was bloody marvellous, to be honest with you. You know, I mean, this idea of junk food advertising outdoors being banned. I mean, let's be honest. People like chicken nuggets, right? People like burgers. People like donuts for very good reasons. High salt, high fat content, high sugar, makes you feel good for a bit. It's fantastic. Look, I'm clearly a walking example of junk food advertising. So, I mean, let people make an informed choice. Tell them that if they're going to eat a bag of donuts, chances are they're going to put on a few pounds, and let them crack on. Let's not ban things.
Again, this is twofold. Again, a lot of this is couched in the language of, well, it's the kids, isn't it? You can't be advertising at the kids because the kids don't know any better. You, as a parent, have it within your gift to buy or not buy things for your children. And again, I think far too many people simply don't want the awkward conversations with their children. They'd rather somebody else dealt with it. But there is a knock-on effect to that, which is, of course, the NHS. Well, we've got to sacrifice everything for the NHS, haven't we? And if that means that you're not allowed to eat anything so that the NHS has slightly less strain put on it for other things, well, that's a price worth paying. You know, everybody sort of has to go along with this line. I do think that that is starting to break, that sort of love affair with the NHS. I think COVID did that. But again, the majority of people will sit there and go, well, if there's no money to be found through general taxation, that means other things will have to go, and that means your way of life.
You want to get involved in this? 0344 499 1000 for your calls. You can send a voice note, we'll play them out, and you can WhatsApp your messages and I'll read them out. We're looking at these three things. Junk food advertising outdoors to be banned. That's a recommendation of a group of MPs. Social media midnight curfew for teenagers aged 16 and 17. That word, curfew. Also, this government quango saying, you know, you're in the countryside, you've got the roads, normally 60 miles per hour. Let's reduce the speed limit to 20 miles per hour to protect cyclists. I mean, I take the view that actually it's motorists who need protection from cyclists in the countryside, because I see stuff at the weekend, you know, they're kind of riding, Benedict, 5 or 6 across. You know, the glorious Sussex or Surrey Downs eclipsed by loads of backsides coated in lycra, and it's just like, come on, you know. You're not playing fair here.
Yes, there's always middle-aged men who have obviously...
They call them mammals, don't they?
They can't afford the midlife crisis Ferraris, so instead they get a racing bike and some lycra. And I think that that's even sadder than the Ferrari. I'd actually respect the Ferrari a bit more. I would also respect these ideas if they couched it in different terms. If it was to reduce the amount of poor equal animals getting hit on the road, then I'd be going, oh, all right, well, I do like foxes and badgers. Cyclists, I don't care, speed up. You know, obviously, I'm not incentivising people, not telling them to speed up.
Of course you're not.
It's a country road, there's no CCTV there, who's to say what'll happen? They could say that they were hit by a speeding motorist, or they were hit by a badger that bolted, who knows? Nobody can say.
Let's put it to the test with talk listeners and viewers. Let's talk about, I mean, I will use the phrase the nanny state. Some people say it's cliched, I think it's justified. Has the nanny state gone too far? And when should the government be able to tell you how to live your lives? I mean, you're listening and watching us at the moment, here at Talk, the home of common sense, coming up to 10:15. Do you just find yourself getting frustrated with all of these diktats? Don't do this, don't eat that. I mean, what do you think? 0344 499 1000. Let's move things on a little bit, Benedict. We've been covering this story here at Talk, and many other media outlets have as well, about the suspected murder of Ann Widdecombe. Now, we're getting drip-fed stuff, literally, on almost an hourly basis. And we heard in the last several hours that the suspect may have targeted other Reform politicians as police probe a left-wing extremist motivation. We go back to, what was it, Saturday morning. We had, what was Friday night, Saturday morning, we had Devon and Cornwall police saying, you know, we don't think there's any political motivation or whatever, you know, and then they kind of rode back on that 24 hours, 36 hours later. Are you surprised about what we're hearing at all?
No, not really.
No.
Honestly, it's... The big giveaway was, of course, normally if a politician has been murdered, immediately we get the whole don't look back in anger and also beware the far right because it is perpetually on the march across Europe. We didn't get either of that. We just got a now there's nothing to see here, there's nothing political going on here, everybody just sort of keep your distance. I think that set off a lot of alarm bells. Nobody was sat there thinking, you know, that this was a tiff between two neighbours or anything like that. I think everybody had their suspicions about what was going on. I thought it was also pretty telling when Nigel Farage came out and voiced his suspicions, which he's entitled to do, and immediately people started accusing him of politicising.
Everyone condemned him, didn't they?
Yes, they did, which of course they didn't do when Joe Cox was murdered, and suddenly that was used as a, well, we need to clamp down on free speech because, you know, clearly it's dangerous. I think that was the big giveaway right there, and it is, I'm afraid, the double standard that's at play in this country. People don't take anything that isn't the far right seriously. You can have a series of Islamist attacks and people still won't take it as seriously as the far right, of whom there are maybe about 300. You can fit them in a sports hall somewhere. Yes, they're dangerous. This is not me saying that they don't exist, but come on. This is an equal opportunities extremism and tendency towards violence in this country. And frankly, our state continues to mollycoddle us and try to convince us that certain things are true and that other things are not true, and that you shouldn't believe your lying eyes and that you have no right to be suspicious. The other big tell, of course, was when we had that little drip feeding of information, which was, well, sources close to the family don't want it to be politicised. And everybody sat there going, they haven't even found family members to quote yet, because it's very famous that Ann Widdecombe did not have close family members. So what is it they're doing?
I mean,
we found a second cousin
how far would you go with this? Is all of this distortion in terms of how, for example, any form of criticism or speculation has been damped down? Is all of this ultimately because it's Nigel Farage's political party, and actually big chunks of the media, all of the other political parties, don't like him for whatever reason? It might have been Brexit, it might be something else, they might simply not like, you know, the straight talking on immigration or whatever, and actually this is fueling all of this.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. I think that he's a particularly polarising figure for, you know, one reason in particular, but there are other things as well. And I think that this has come as a real... It's perhaps grim to put it in these terms, but this is how I think a lot of people in the media view this murder. It's really inconvenient that this has happened at the exact moment that they thought they'd got him. They thought they'd got him on these financial issues, which he was turning around and saying, I took the money for personal security. And they were going, yeah, no, you're just bent, Nigel. You just took the money because that's what you are. You're on the take. And then something like this happens, well, suddenly they can't then turn around and go, you just took the money because you're on the take. And I think a lot of them are, frankly, pretty angry about that, because it has completely derailed what they thought was a wonderful opportunity to nail him at the exact moment that what they should have been doing is focusing on a man who has just been anointed Prime Minister, who has no actual mandate, has no plan, has no, you know,
no idea who's going to be in his cabinet. We've got no idea.
But rather than scrutinise this truly absurd and you know, astonishing transfer of power, rather than actually analyse that, which of course they also didn't do with Keir Starmer, they'd rather go on about the Nigel Farage thing, which, again, there were legitimate questions to be asked, but you just see the difference in interest placed in the two things. And then this comes along and suddenly they can't talk about that, and I think a lot of them are really irritated by that.
We'll get more on this. There's due to be a Reform UK press conference at 10:30 this morning, so in just over 10 minutes' time, we'll bring it to you live here on Talk. We don't know the nature or the content of the press conference. We know it's being led by Zia Yusuf, so we'll broadcast that live just after 10:30 here on Talk, so do not go anywhere. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator alongside me, through until, I think it's 1 o'clock this afternoon, isn't it? Because we've got Prime Minister's questions just after midday. You're going to be here for that as well. We also will have Peter Cardwell, Talk presenter, in the studio as well at midday as we chew over Sir Keir Starmer's last ever PMQs. I wonder what's going to be said. In a few moments' time, we're going to go live to Patmos in Greece. We're going to talk to travel correspondent, I think travel legend, actually, in many, many ways, Simon Calder. He's travel correspondent at Telegraph and host of the Travel Expert podcast. Gibraltar has opened its gates to Spaniards as Britons face tougher rules. Border with EU torn down in what some papers are describing this morning as a dreadful surrender. What does it mean for travellers and tourists? We'll get a take from Simon Calder next, here at Talk.
comments from a fool, really. I mean, you don't have to be intelligent to be a politician, but it does help. You know, if he's going to talk about it, he needs to, if he's going to make historical references, he needs to read history correctly. Argentina weren't even a country as when we occupied the islands. They were called the Nation of States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's Talk. It's a Wednesday morning. I'm Duncan Barks. Good to have you along this morning. 0344 499 1000, your number for your calls, your voice notes and your WhatsApps, looking at a variety of stuff that's happening in our country, which makes me wonder how far you're prepared to tolerate what we might call the nanny state. We've got a number of things going on here. We've got a Lib Dem council in Portsmouth who have removed the St George Cross flag because apparently on the day that England plays Argentina, the flag contravenes their fire safety policy. We'll talk to a local council about that a little bit later on, but, you know, moving flags. We've got a government quango saying, you know what, we need to reduce the speed limit on country roads from 60 to 20 miles per hour. A social media midnight curfew for teenagers. That word curfew, politicians use it quite happily. And outdoor advertising for junk food to be banned. That's what a group of MPs want, apparently, for all of us to ensure that we don't eat too many burgers. When and where should we tell the government to get off? 0344 499 1000 for your thoughts on that. Just after 10:30, we will take live on the air the Reform UK press conference. At the moment, we don't know what the content is going to be. Of course, we can speculate, and I'm sure rightly there'll be an update about Reform UK and their tributes to Ann Widdecombe. And also, I think the issue of security, particularly for Reform UK MPs, might get some further clarity on that. We'll broadcast that live at around 10:30 this morning here on Talk. In the meantime, let's just get an update on this story. Some newspapers describing it as EU border chaos. And it's the change at the border with Gib and Spain, which, to strip it down, some people are saying, well, it just makes it easier for Spaniards to get into Gib, but in the opposite direction, harder for Brits to cross the border. Let's find out if that is factually correct. Simon Calder, travel correspondent at The Telegraph and host of the Travel Expert podcast, joins us live from Patmos in Greece. Hello, Simon.
Very nice to see you, Duncan. Absolutely no junk food here, drinking some very nice Greek coffee in a cafe here. It's a lovely place and time to be here. But meanwhile, I've just been talking to people in Gibraltar, and they are physically taking down the border fence that for 117 years has divided Gibraltar, of course, British overseas territory, from the town of La Linea, almost at the southern tip of Spain. Great celebrations, because if you happen to be in Gibraltar, or you happen to be in Spain, you can now travel freely. And indeed, starting off in Gibraltar, you could go to the far north of Norway without having to go through any borders at all, because you'd be in the Schengen area frontier-free zone. So great celebrations there. However, for those of us who, including me, love Gibraltar because it's a beautiful, very scenic, very historic, fascinating, dare I say it, diverse and superb place, even with some really nice beaches. Those of us who love Gibraltar are thinking, well, it's going to get a bit tougher to get to, because you will still be checked when you fly in by the border, the Gibraltar police, but then you've got past them, and then the fun starts, because you will need to go to the Spanish frontier officials, and they won't just be checking that you are entitled to get into Gibraltar. That was the last lot. They will be saying, okay, Duncan, can we just check the issue date and the expiry date of your passport to make sure that you comply with those rules? And we're also interested in how many days in the past 180 days you've been in the Schengen area. And that is absolutely relevant, because even if you were just going to go to Gibraltar for 3 months, which until yesterday, you could do perfectly happily. That time will all count as being in Europe. So it's as though the Schengen area has got a 30th member, and that is the lovely British overseas territory of Gibraltar. And this is very much as a result of Brexit. I can tell you what the Foreign Office is saying. Yep. British sovereignty remains unaffected. The UK military base fully protected. One of the last Brexit issues sorted. And also, I mean, they do point out, which is completely true, that it used to be a pain. Lots of people would use Gibraltar Airport to get into southern Spain, and you used to get through the passport control, and then immediately you'd have to go through another border. That will now stop. So for a lot of people, it will be smoother, but it really was, say officials, the only way that the Gibraltar problem could be fixed without having fingerprinting and facial biometrics checked for people just crossing between Gibraltar and Spain.
Excellent.
So,
Simon, thank you for explaining it so well. Enjoy the rest of your coffee. That's travel expert, travel correspondent at The Telegraph and host of the Travel Expert podcast, Simon Corder, here on Talk. I mean, you know, might make it easier for Spaniards to cross into Gib, but as you heard there, chaos, as one media outlet described it this morning, if you're trying to go in the other direction with all of those checks. We're talking about the encroaching powers of the nanny state. Elliot's got a view on this. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. You're absolutely right. It's a complete disgrace. Ronald Reagan, whether you agreed with him, whether you didn't, he said, get the government out of people's lives. Yeah. The government in this country, successive governments, have constantly interfered with everything we do. Let me give you one major example that no one talks about. Devolution brought in by Blair. The costs of the local parliament in Scotland, in Wales and Northern Ireland. We don't have one in England. People think Westminster is. Westminster is the UK and Northern Ireland a British parliament, so to speak. We don't have an English parliament. The costs and the whole servitude and activity of Scotland's parliament, it's been a disaster. The Scottish parliament has done nothing. That is bringing local activity supposedly in favour of local people. It's done nothing. It's
so you take the view, Elliot, that devolution with Scotland and Wales is just another example of political interference. Just let people crack on.
Absolutely it is. And you'll see with Burnham, this awful, unelected, awful man who is, in my view, a complete fraud, allegedly, I better say, because I'll get into trouble, I guess. He talks about now wanting to, you know, move number 10 to the north and open up all the local authorities. Before you know it, they'll be telling you, I live in London, you can travel between the hours of X and Y, but you can't travel after 10 o'clock at night, or you can't eat this, or you can't go here. The whole country is becoming a North Korean type environment where you cannot do what I say, you have to do what I do.
All right, going to leave it there, Elliot. Great call, thank you. That's interesting. Do you share that sentiment, Benedict, that the whole country is becoming this kind of like on par with North Korea? Do as I say, not as I do, or is that too much?
Well, we don't shoot anybody for not doing it yet. No. Some people would say, actually, it would be nice if we had a little bit more harsh justice, because actually that's the irritating thing, is that you have lots of people who will be sanctioned for doing certain things, and then people who actually break laws and don't get sanctioned very harshly. So I suppose that's the sort of the dichotomy going on there. It is a slow creeping march, though, towards a situation where there are simply fewer and fewer things that you can do, and where the default will become that you have to ask or seek permission for things rather than the other way around, which is assuming that you can. That is, dare I say it, a rather European way of doing things, not very British.
I think you're absolutely right. Listen, keep your calls coming in on that. 0344 499 1000 as we kick around the nanny state. Has it gone too far? And for you, listening and watching at the moment, when should the government start or stop telling you how to live your life? We're standing by for a press conference from Reform UK. We'll get that on the air as soon as it happens. Here at Talk.
Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a massive £26,000. The question is, what would you do with all that money?
I don't know. We've got a wedding.
I would buy a camper van.
Probably just like clothes, yeah.
Go on a big holiday. Immigrate.
So if you fancy getting your hands on £26,000 tax-free, here's all the details you need to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just turned 10:30 Wednesday morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barks. We're standing by to bring you live a press conference from the headquarters of Reform UK. I think it's their headquarters, certainly in Westminster, with the party's shadow Home Secretary, Home Affairs spokesperson Zia Yusuf. We'll bring that live to you in a few moments' time here at Talk. If you missed Jeremy Kyle this morning, then he had Nigel Farage on the show. So do go to our YouTube channel and check out the interview. It's all over our socials as well. Really interesting chat with Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, Jez earlier, asking him whether or not he's tempted to walk away from frontline politics, given what appears to be very genuine safety concerns, not only for Reform UK politicians following the suspected murder of Ann Widdecombe, but politicians right across the board. You can see, if you're watching us at the moment on YouTube, that is the scene, a couple of lecterns there in Westminster with Reform UK branding on there, whilst we'll wait for Zia Yusuf to appear. And Benedict, apologies if I have to interrupt you as part of this. I mean, this is once again bringing under the spotlight, sadly, the security that politicians in this country get or don't get, and MPs as well. I mean, what do we know? You know, Andy Burnham is calling for a review of MP safety after Ann Widdecombe's death. Has the time come to really ratchet up security for MPs?
I mean, to a point, yes, but also I think MPs have to look upon their own sins here, actually. Right. I think, you know, one of the instinctive things that we get from MPs when there is an act of violence against one of them is there needs to be a crackdown on free speech, to which, you know, actually the first thing you might want to say to them is, well, you first. Right. Honestly, in the UK, we have such a dreadful race to the bottom when it comes to, frankly, casting aspersions about the motivations of politicians by other politicians.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Zia Yusuf has just appeared on the stage behind a podium in Westminster. Let's bring this to you live.
By the news of another of our beloved politicians brutally murdered. After Sir David Amess and Joe Cox, now Ann Widdecombe has been savagely killed in her home. All three died without any protection. This is unacceptable for a country with a £1.2 trillion annual budget. An attack on a politician is an assault on democracy itself. Anne was without doubt one of this country's most formidable and courageous politicians. She inspired me and countless others. She was unwavering in her belief, and she made Britain a better place. I can only imagine what her family is going through, and my heart goes out to them. I cannot tell you why Anne was killed. That is for the police and the courts. What I can tell you is that counter-terrorism police are investigating her murder as a suspected act of terrorism. And I can tell you about the climate in which she was killed. A relentless narrative from politicians and the media that Reform UK is a threat to be urgently stopped. A narrative so relentless it constitutes incitement. And why are we targeted like this? Because we say things that are unfashionable among many in Westminster, but are popular in the country at large. Let me start with the most prominent. And it's incredibly difficult to repeat these words that have been said of our late friend, our late treasure, Anne. But we cannot ever allow this to happen again. And so I must. David Lammy, now the Deputy Prime Minister, described Anne as a, quote, poisonous bigot who wants to, quote, drag us back to the 19th century and, quote, throw minorities out in the cold on the way. He boldly declared, quote, we must stand up to them before it's too late. Before it's too late. Wes Streeting, until recently the Health Secretary, said, quote, if only science had a cure for Ann Widdecombe. A woman on Twitter said, quote, Ann Widdecombe better go this week. She is a little fascist beast. This woman happens to have been, until just a few months ago, the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, Jess Phillips. Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, made the inflammatory declaration that, quote, the greatest threat to the Britain we love doesn't come from Tehran or Moscow. It comes from within. I'm talking about Nigel Farage. Or with poison on British soil. The Iranian regime has attempted multiple terrorist attacks on British soil. Is it any wonder, with such rhetoric relentlessly levelled at reform, that some may be moved to try to eliminate that supposed threat through lethal violence? Lisa Nandy, Labour's Culture Secretary, was asked whether Reform were fascists. She responded, quote, if it walks like a duck. The chairman of the Conservative Party likened Reform to Nazis. Instead of sacking him, the leader of the Conservative Party said he was, quote, being funny. Ms Badenoch, nothing about comparing anyone at Reform to Nazis is funny. Keir Starmer described Reform policies as, quote, racist and immoral. Wes Streeting insisted that Reform was dangerous, nationalistic, and, quote, using propaganda reminiscent of the 1930s. And Lucy Powell described Mr Farage as, quote, a threat to democracy. Look, these are a tiny fraction of countless examples. And keep in mind that the views Reform UK espouse are anything but niche. Our party has led over 350 national opinion polls in a row. And then there's the media. In the run-up to the 2024 general election, the BBC was forced to apologise to Richard Tice for calling Reform far-right. Just a few weeks ago, the BBC had to apologise to Nigel Farage for falsely claiming he said people should respond to the body cam footage of Henry Novak's murder with, quote, white cold rage. And the aftermath of Anne's death only serves as an appalling case study of the trends that I am describing. It was on the morning of the 10th of July that we learned of the devastating news that Ann Widdecombe had passed away. 9 hours then passed before we discovered it was being treated as murder. During those hours, some in the media appeared gleeful. Adam Bolton appeared on Sky News, referring to Anne as a spinster and an old maid. Peter Tatchell called her a bigot. This was after they learned she was dead. After arresting and releasing a man, the police then arrested a 28-year-old man who lived in South Yorkshire. By Saturday night, we knew that Anne, a high-profile Reform UK politician, had been murdered, and the chief suspect was a man who had driven over 300 miles to her house. We knew that nothing had been stolen. Yet with all this in the public domain, the police, the authorities and the media repeatedly appeared to all but rule out the idea that this could be a politically motivated attack. On the 12th of July, the BBC ran the headline, "Police say no suggestion of political motive in Ann Widdecombe killing after new arrest." That same day, The Guardian's headline was, quote, "Nothing to suggest Ann Widdecombe death politically motivated." Now, at this stage, it was obvious something was not adding up. Reform MPs were devastated with grief for the loss of their friend, rocked by the shock of the brutality of her murder. But candidly, they were also fearful. Fearful for their lives, fearful for the lives of their families. And when Nigel made the obvious point that he could see the attack was premeditated, a possibility any serious person had to confront, the media hounded him for it. The Guardian ran the headline, "Police warn Widdecombe murder speculation is unhelpful and distressing." The Times worked with a former Tory MP to run the headline, "Nigel Farage accused of using Ann Widdecombe's death as propaganda." Former Conservative Party leader Ian Duncan Smith took the opportunity to condemn Nigel, declaring, quote, "Ann's death is not an Agatha Christie novel." As time has passed, Nigel's assertion appears to have been well-founded, and those who attacked him have been proven to be, well, I'll let viewers be the judge. And I'm afraid the police's conduct has also been called into question. Jonathan Hall, KC, the government's own counter-terrorism advisor, has said, quote, "I don't understand why Devon and Cornwall police were steering the public away from the idea that this was a terrorist case, and I don't know why they didn't simply say they had an open mind as to the motivation. I think they probably broke one of the golden rules of investigations, which is not to comment on live investigations in case new facts emerge." Now, counter-terrorism police are investigating what they describe as a targeted attack on Anne. The leader of our party lives his life under the ever-present threat of mortal danger. He has received 1,577 threats since February this year, including 597 death threats. The most persistent individual targeting Nigel sent 6 directed threats to him on Facebook between June the 24th and July the 6th, including a message telling him to, quote, "Get the F out of Wales before I just kill Nigel Farage. You can die at any effing moment." Another individual posted on X last month saying, quote, "Execute Nigel Farage today," today in all caps, followed by 2 further escalating posts within 8 hours. A third individual wrote on X, quote, "Can someone shoot Nigel Farage? Make him a self-fulfilling prophecy." In fact, social media is awash with threats to kill Nigel. Such threats have been ever present for years, yet astonishingly, last autumn, just days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the authorities took the decision to cut the size of Nigel's security detail by 75%. Then the government sent David Lammy out to declare that Nigel, quote, "flirted with the Hitler Youth." Reform donors thankfully stepped in, and the party covered the cost of a security detail the same size as before, commensurate with the enormous threat. This Labour government has since moved to cap funding in a manner designed to surgically choke off Reform's largest sources of funding. Make of that what you will. During the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, Sarah Pochin's office was subjected to at least 9 incidents, including Nazi stickers placed on the building, eggs thrown at the door, threatening visits from members of the public, and an Antifa presence 2 days before polling day. Since her election, multiple specific online threats have been passed to police. The most serious current threat comes from militant transgender activist group Bash Back.
that has a published direct action guide explicitly targeting MPs who speak on gender issues. The guide instructs supporters to identify targets and, quote, hit repeatedly until they desist. Hit repeatedly until they desist. Dame Andrea Jenkins, the Reform Mayor for Lincolnshire, has received regular death and rape threats. In fact, there are so many it would take an entire press conference to go through them. But one said, quote, I hope your little boy is molested and raped by refugees, and Hamas will come after you. The toll of threats and death threats is severe enough for politicians themselves, but what often really gets to them is the thought of their families being at risk. Whatever the dangers, however unfair, the politician makes the choice to thrust themselves into the public eye. This is not the case for their partners and their children. And it is in this context that a few weeks ago, an extremely worried father begged the editor of The Times not to publish a photo of his daughter's home. Thanks to modern AI tools, the photo would make locating a home as easy as a Google search for those who sought its location. And as I've laid out, there are far too many who would. Despite the pleas of this concerned father, The Times published the photo of his daughter's house anyway. The name of that concerned, now devastated father is Nigel Farage. What possible public interest could there be in publishing a photo of Nigel's daughter's home? Days later, as Nigel Farage returned from America, he was met at the airport by a camera crew sent by Sky News. And this came shortly after Nigel's daughter's home had been approached by Sky. The very thing he feared, the very thing he begged the Times to prevent from happening, was coming to pass. His response was a terse exchange with the reporter. And even then, the media and the political class rounded on him. A columnist in The Guardian insisted Mr. Farage was, quote, clearly rattled, and that a man had, quote, exploited race as a populist issue, coded as immigration, was on his, quote, last fling. The Mirror insisted Mr. Farage was, quote, rattled. A Conservative MP insisted he was, quote, rattled. Notice the same word deployed simultaneously across newspapers and parliamentarians. Well, what you saw in that video was indeed unusual for Nigel. He was not his normal, composed self. But that was not a man who was rattled. What you saw in that footage was the righteous anger of a loving father who, having received 597 death threats since February, was worried sick about his daughter, whose safety had been put in jeopardy for no good reason at all by the Times. The fact is this: many politicians and members of the media are effectively stopping the function of democracy by creating an environment of such hostility for reform and making it unpalatably dangerous to air perfectly reasonable views. That needs to end. Those who question Nigel Farage's need for security should stop. Politicians from other parties are perfectly entitled to disagree with our policies and criticise them. They are, of course, free to criticise us. But they must stop equating us to murderous regimes that butchered tens of millions of people and committed some of the greatest horrors in history. The media should prosecute their role in holding all politicians to account, without stooping to endangering them or their families. And we must now ask ourselves if we wish to be a country which has a functioning democracy. Reform believes in Britain. We believe without a functioning democracy, there is no Britain. Now, for us to have one, politicians must be free to argue their opinions without fear of being murdered for them. Just as Sir David Amess was. Just as Joe Cox was. And now our dear Anne has been killed in her home. Enough is enough. I do not want to see politicians, regardless of party, fearing for their lives for speaking their mind. I do not want to see the hounding of families, the publication of their homes, I do not want to see another politician killed in this country. I do not want to see what happened to Anne happen ever again. This has to stop. I will close by announcing a new reform policy. If Reform win the next general election, as Home Secretary, I will ensure that all members of Parliament, of all parties, are provided with round-the-clock protection. We will also allocate significant new resources to protect former politicians still active in public life. No matter how much I, Nigel, Richard, or anyone else may disagree with your views, if you are an MP, you must be able to air them without fear. An attack on one politician is an assault on our democracy itself. Knowing Anne as I did, I know she would agree. Thank you.
So you've just had a press conference from Westminster, courtesy of Zia Yusuf, who is Reform UK's Home Affairs spokesperson. I think we can say that it was a very emotional address there from Zia Yusuf, and all kinds of bits we need to cover here. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, in the studio with me here at Talk. I mean, I was struck not only by the announcement at the end, which is if Reform win the next election, Zia Yusuf pledging that all MPs will get 24-hour security, including also former politicians as well. So that's something interesting to chew over at the end of the conference. But also the way that Zia Yusuf went through all of the various politicians, including Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, Ed Davey, Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Lib Dems, and indeed a number of senior Labour politicians, and stuff they said about Reform UK in the past, you know, and Ann Widdecombe particularly as well. David Lammy in the past branding Ann Widdecombe a poisonous bigot. Former Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who said if only science had a cure for Ann Widdecombe. And Lisa Nandy, who's the current Culture Secretary, when asked if she thought that Reform UK were fascists, she replied, if it walks like a duck. I mean, Zia Yusuf not holding back there at all.
No, and it's curious because it was sort of following on almost from what I was saying just before we went to the press conference, which is that politicians need to look upon their own sins first and foremost, and that is that in this country there has been a race to the bottom when it comes to describing political opponents. A lot of this is couched in the foundational myth of the modern British state, which is that we went to war against the Nazis and the Nazis were a unique form of evil, and anything to the right of the Conservative Party, including sometimes the Conservative Party, are effectively Nazis. Why is that dangerous? Because it justifies violence. That's what it comes down to ultimately. Nobody would dare sit around and go, oh no, you should tolerate Nazis. No, people actually believe that that's entirely justified. So if you continue to label your opponents Nazis long enough, actually people will consider political violence against them an acceptable response. And we need to remember here, there are a lot of people in this country who are feeble-minded or insane or whatever it is, that will take these things literally. And that's why it's dangerous when people talk about, oh, well, it's just rhetoric, it's just, a flourish. No, a lot of these people know exactly what it is that they're doing. They know full well the hatred that they are attempting to stir up. And this is ironic, of course, because that is always the accusation levelled at Reform, that they're stirring up hate, and hate is the worst thing you can possibly do. No. Violence is the worst thing you can possibly do. And that, I think, is something that a lot of politicians would never admit to this, but tacitly they understand this. And they don't have a problem with it, because it's not them that are being targeted. These are their political opponents. A lot of these politicians do genuinely believe that what Reform is offering is bad and potentially even evil. I don't think they have any qualms about potentially dangerous members of the public taking their chance against people like Nigel Farage. It would deal with a problem.
But words have consequences, and I think that was the underlying theme of what Zia Yusuf was saying when he used a number of quotes from Labour cabinet members, past and present, and also other political leaders. Listen, if you heard or indeed watched that particular press conference, that address from Zia Yusuf, do let us know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApp messages and your voice notes, which we will, of course, play out. You can text the word talk in your comments to 87222. Your reaction to what Zia Yusuf was saying. I mean, essentially, if we strip it down, Benedict, it's every politician who's criticised Reform UK in the past using all kinds of different language, they've got a case to answer. That's essentially what he was saying.
That's what he's saying. But what I would also say is, he sort of ended this by saying that it has to stop. It's not going to stop.
No.
It's not going to stop because actually rhetoric is what we are left with when you have a system and a state that doesn't work anymore. All you have then are your words in an attempt to blame other people for the system breaking down, or to warn the public, now it may be breaking down, but don't you vote for those other people because they'll make things worse, because they're dangerous. So, you know, whilst you can say that it's noble up to a point that you'll get, you know, Zia Yusuf saying this must end because this is causing genuine threats to people, and in this case, genuine harm to people, it's not going to, because in order for it to change, there would have to be a change in the political culture of this country, which is to actually fix things, to get things done. The politicians in this country, broadly speaking, I wouldn't say are not interested in doing things, but I don't think that they're capable of doing things.
Right.
And ultimately, this all stems back to Brexit. You know, lots of people like to say that Brexit, again, is one of these dangerous things that whips up hate. No, it was a direct response to the fact that the political system in this country, people could see it all the way back then, is not fulfilling its function. People aren't enacting the changes that people want. The public go to the polling booths, they vote for certain things, they get the diametric opposite, and the politicians shrug and go, oh, well, what can you do, but don't vote for those people, they're worse. That's basically the system on repeat.
And a quick question, a final question for this hour. How do you think the politicians who were named there by Zia Yusuf, where he quoted comments they made in the past, how do you think they're going to react to this?
They'll double down. They'll double down.
But specifically, even quotes that refer to Ann Widdecombe directly, you know, David Lammy calling her in the past a poisonous dwarf. If a journalist tackles Lammy and says, you were mentioned by Zia Yusuf, you think Lammy's going to double down?
I think that he will give some off-the-cuff remarks, you know, speaking regret about speaking in the heat of the moment or this and the other, but then he'll go and do it again about somebody else. Lisa Nandy will absolutely do it again. I mean, what else has she got to do? She's not interested in the portfolio she actually has. All that she seems to do is talk. And, you know, I think ultimately also, I'm a big fan of Kemi Badenoch, but I think that the way in which she sort of passed it off the remark of the chairman of the Conservative Party is, oh, he was just being funny. The Conservative Party has not changed. The leader might be very good, but the actual party underneath that, it is still the same party that was booted out a couple of years ago. These people do not take this sort of thing seriously. They will continue to behave in that way.
All right, Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, alongside me here on this Wednesday morning at Talk. Of course, we have Prime Minister's questions at midday that will broadcast live as well. Your reaction to what you've just heard from Zia Yusuf, call me 0344 499 1000. You can send WhatsApp messages to that number and voice notes as well, or you can text the word Talk in your comments to 87222. Wednesday morning, I'm Duncan Barks. This is Talk.
Comments from a fool, really. I mean, you don't have to be intelligent to be a politician, but it does help. You know, if he's going to talk about it, he needs to, if he's going to make historical references, he needs to read history correctly. Argentina weren't even a country as when we occupied the islands. They were called the Nation of States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the home of common sense. It's Talk. I'm Duncan Barks. It's a Wednesday morning. I'm here through until 1 p.m. Just after midday, we'll cross to the House of Commons because it is the final Prime Minister's questions that'll feature Sir Keir Starmer. I wonder what Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, leader of the opposition, might ask him. Will she get in some last-minute blows? Or will she use the opportunity to possibly rightly criticise the fact that as of Monday we're going to have a new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. He's not appeared in the House of Commons. No one really knows what he stands for. Maybe she'll use that as an attack line. Anyway, you'll hear it here just after midday at the home of Common Sense Talk. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, is alongside me between now and 1 p.m. Before we talk to Lord Fawkes, the Labour peer and former minister under Tony Blair, about some of the stories circulating this morning, I just want to get a recap from you, Benedict, regarding what we heard earlier, the press conference in Westminster that was taking place, and the words of Zia Yusuf, the Home Affairs spokesperson for Reform UK, really having a pop. Justifiably, I think, to a number of politicians right across the political spectrum, including the leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, Kemi Badenoch, Conservative leader, for stuff that they've all said about Nigel Farage and Reform UK. He also referenced various comments that have been made in the past by Labour politicians regarding Ann Widdecombe as well. Where do you think reform goes from here after that particular press conference?
It's tricky to know because I don't actually think that these attacks are going to let up, these verbal attacks on them. I mean, I don't think that they're going to stop anytime soon.
So you think despite this, despite the death of Ann Widdecombe, we're going to have political opponents of Reform UK just continue with these attacks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think a lot of their political opponents genuinely believe them to be evil. I think that they genuinely think that any controls on migration or crime or this sort of thing are some sort of abhorrent throwback.
Well, then they must think that 25 to 30% of the UK population is also evil if you look at the pollings for Reform UK.
Yes, I suspect that they actually think that a greater proportion of them are. I think that a lot of them, you know, I mean, look at the result of the Brexit referendum and actually the way that people spoke about Brexit in the aftermath of that. Actually dig beneath the surface, and a lot of politicians hover a lot of contempt
for the people.
Absolutely.
For the 52%.
I was going to say, and the evidence of that is probably revealed in the policies that they inflict on those people. Repeatedly in this country, politicians simply ignore what the people want because they genuinely, in the best case scenario, they think that the people are stupid and don't know what's in their best interest, and in the worst, they think that they're genuinely awful people. And I think that, you know, it would do a lot of voters well to remember that, actually. And I'm not saying that this is all politicians, but I'm saying that there is a good amount of them that hold the voters in contempt and believe them to be quite stupid or, frankly, quite bad people.
Messages coming in off the back of the Reform UK press conference. This one is from Suze, who says, excellent presentation from Zia Yusuf. The political elite need to stop behaving like spiteful adolescents. When you have Angela Rayner calling Tories scum, it's no surprise that the discourse degenerates into the language of the jungle and could lead to violence. It's uncivilised and it needs more gravitas and professionalism from my politicians. That's what I need. You never hear Farage talking in a similar way. This one here from Suze, who says, Starmer, Lammy, Nandy, Davey, Phillips, Streeting, Powell, Tatchell, Bolton, MSM and Hodges in particular, everything they say fired up the cowardly and vile creature who took Anne's life. None of these people are fit to be in public office, says Suze. Keep your messages coming in, 0344 499 1000. You can WhatsApp your thoughts. You can send a voice note to that number. We'll play it out, and we can chat about it as well, because this is a place where the UK comes to talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a reaction to this from Lord Fawkes, Labour peer and former minister under Tony Blair, who joins us this morning on Talk. Good morning.
How are you, Duncan?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you for your time, Lord Fawkes.
I'm enjoying your really balanced, unbiased reporting.
Well, it's very kind of you. Thank you. Is there sarcasm there?
Yeah, a little.
Anything in particular you want to pick me up on?
No, nothing at all.
Excellent. Well, let's crack on then. I don't know how much... Did you see the Reform UK press conference or hear anything about it?
No.
No. Well,
I'm busy. I'm working in my office.
Understood. Okay. So I'm just curious to get your... Well, I'll explain and I'll share with you some of the comments that were made because I'm keen to get your reaction. So Reform UK's Home Affairs spokesperson Zia Yusuf was on the stage and he criticised the media for firing up what he believes is an unsavoury attitude, a dangerous attitude to Reform UK. But also he talked about rival opponents, rival politicians who made various comments about Ann Widdecombe in the past, including David Lammy, describing her as a poisonous bigot. Also former Health Secretary Wes Streeting, quoted as saying, if only science had a cure for Ann Widdecombe, and various other comments as well. It seems to me that Zia Yusuf is really going after political opponents who he believes might have a case to answer when it comes to the death of Ann Widdecombe. What would your reaction be?
I pay no attention to what Zia Yusuf says. He's never been elected to anything. I understand that the Reform UK turned him down when he sought to be a candidate in the by-election. I regret Ann Widdecombe's death. I worked with her in the House of Commons. She brought a sense of humour to politics, which is much needed. She was a great woman. But what people seem to forget is that 2 MPs were murdered, Joe Cox, a Labour MP, and David Amos, a Tory MP. And that really was terrible. And some people in this Reform Party seem to forget that.
Well, I don't think they do, because if you'd heard the speech and watched his speech, his press conference, he did refer to both those MPs, and rightly so, and you're right to bring it up as well. I mean, put to one side your clear dislike of Zia Yusuf because he's unelected, and, you know, that's a fair point to make.
I've met him as well. He's the rudest man I've ever met. He makes some of the people that I've met over my lifetime seem generous and kind by comparison.
Understood. So you don't like him. But I'm interested in this idea that whether or not comments regarding Reform UK over the last few weeks and in the past have somehow led to where we find ourselves today, sadly, talking about the death of one of their spokespeople, Ann Widdecombe. I mean, is there a line that needs to be drawn when we talk about political discourse in this country and the language that is used?
Yes, there is, and I think people who use that kind of language ought to think carefully. But the criticism of Reform UK hasn't been about that. It's been about the leader getting £5 million from a crypto billionaire. Now, you don't get, Duncan, £5 million without having to do something for it. He said it was for his safety, and then we find out that he turned down safety by the state. A car, a driver, and a bodyguard. Perhaps he turned that down because he didn't want the police and the state to know where he was up.
Well, he said he turned it down because he didn't believe it was enough security. I think it was 1 driver and 1 bodyguard, and he said, I don't think that's sufficient for the amount of threats that I receive on almost a daily basis. That's the reason he gave.
Well, it's sufficient for Kemi Badenoch, and she's leader of the opposition.
Yes, but does she get 30 death threats a day?
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. So let's just, because I understand why you mentioned the £5 million donation, and that is being investigated. Well, the investigation has been paused currently because, of course, Nigel Farage is not an MP at the moment. You've got the by-election in Clacton. But I'm
looking forward to that by-election, by the way, Duncan, really very much indeed.
I'm curious as to where you think the line should be drawn when we talk about language used in today's political discourse. I mean, is it acceptable for people like David Lammy in the past to describe Ann Widdecombe as a poisonous bigot?
I don't remember that. I wouldn't have used that word. And there's some words...
But what about Wes Streeting saying if only science had a cure for Ann Widdecombe? Well, is that acceptable?
Duncan, perhaps once you finish the programme, have a look online and see some of the things that people say about me. I don't know what they say about you, but you get these things.
They say quite a lot about me, and they might say stuff about you, but this is not about you or me. This is about senior Labour politicians in the past who've used language regarding Ann Widdecombe, a woman, to put it bluntly, is now dead. And I'm trying to get out of you, Lord Fawkes, whether or not you think that language has been acceptable in the past.
No, I wouldn't have used it, and I didn't use it. And,
you wouldn't use it, I wouldn't use it. Are you prepared to condemn Wes Streeting for saying if only science had a cure for Ann Widdecombe?
I don't think it helps to condemn anyone for...
Well, you must have a view. Why don't you have a view?
I don't think it helps to condemn anyone for things that were said in the past. I liked Ann Widdecombe, and I was in the House of Lords yesterday when people from all sides paid great tribute to Ann Widdecombe, including Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, and the Lord Speaker, Michael Forsyth. She was very well liked, and every so often people do make comments. I mean, you know,
let me just
let me just say, I supported her very much against. She was against hunting.
She was against fox
her
hunting,
on that.
absolutely.
But some of the pro-hunt people were very, very nasty to her.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do, but then again, we're not talking about pro-hunt people. We're talking about Labour colleagues of yours who have
No,
used
I know you
language in
are,
the
but
past.
I'm talking about other people. I think you're
this is with the greatest of respect. This is a massive distraction. If you're not prepared to condemn, are you prepared to say that going forward, some of your Labour colleagues really need to reflect on some of the language they've used in the past?
And so do some of the Tories, and some of
That's not the question I'm asking you. This is massive deflection. Why won't you answer the question? My viewers and listeners want to know what you think about this. If you're not happy to condemn them, are you prepared to say they were wrong to use those words?
I'm just saying that I wouldn't have used that.
I'm not talking about you. I'm asking about your Labour colleagues. You're a peer in the House of Lords. You sit as a Labour peer. These people you know, were they out of order to use this language in the past?
I don't remember them using them, and just because Zia Yusuf says it, I don't necessarily
well, we've had it verified. These things have been said, so it's irrelevant whether or not you remember it. Do you think this is suitable language?
You need, Duncan, you need to know the context in which anything was said, and I just don't accept that Zia Yusuf will put anything in the right context. He is
all right, okay, well, this is useful, so give me the context where you think is acceptable.
Well,
I haven't even asked you the question. Give me the context where you think it's acceptable to define someone as a poisonous bigot.
But you invited me on to talk about a number of things, including the alleged postponement of the House of Commons sitting next week, and who's going to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. And just because
I'm keen to talk about that.
Just because the strange person, Zia Yusuf, who has never been elected, I don't understand.
Well, with the greatest of respect, what you're doing now is attacking an individual, aren't you? Because you don't like what he said. Isn't this the problem with modern politics? All you're doing now is having a pop at Zia Yusuf, in the way that your previous Labour colleagues have had a pop at a politician who's no longer alive because they didn't like her views.
No, I'm saying that he's never been elected. He's appointed. He calls himself the Shadow Home Secretary. I thought it was a man called, who is it? Mel Stride, who's the Shadow Home Secretary, not Zia Yusuf.
It's Chris Philp. All right.
Chris Philp, rather.
Okay.
Philp,
so are you saying you want to move the conversation on now because you don't want to give me your view on whether or not the language used in the past was inappropriate?
I'm saying it might be sensible, having invited me on to
OK, well, no, that's fine. I'll let our viewers and listeners judge whether or not they actually got an answer from you in a clear position. But you were good enough to also want to talk about Andy Burnham, who becomes our Prime Minister on Monday, replacing, obviously, Sir Keir Starmer. Final Prime Minister's questions at midday with Sir Keir Starmer. There is concern that Andy Burnham really hasn't had any scrutiny at all from members of Parliament before becoming Prime Minister. Do you think that's fair criticism?
That's the way that it's turned out, yes. I was very pleased, incidentally, that Keir Starmer was given the Légion d'honneur by the French government as a token of the work that he's done, and I supported Keir Starmer. Andy Burnham has now become, or will become our Prime Minister through a proper process. He's got the support of the majority of members of Parliament in the House of Commons. That's our system. And he will face scrutiny when Parliament returns on the 1st of September.
Do you not think it's a bad look that you've got this guy who's come in, he wasn't even an MP when there was the general election back in 2024, so he wasn't even standing on the Labour Party manifesto, and there was an opportunity, potentially, for him to face members of Parliament right across the political spectrum before recess this week when Parliament quits, and that's not happening. It's not a great look for democracy, is it?
Well, he'll be there from the 1st of September. In Clapham, in the constituency.
All right. How well do you know Andy Burnham?
Very well, yes.
Okay, can you tell my viewers and listeners here at Talk what he actually stands for and anything?
Yes, he supports the Labour Party, redistribution of wealth. He supports the whole Labour manifesto on which we were elected 2 years ago.
Right. Well, where does he stand on the NHS?
He believes the NHS should be free at the point of need.
Where does he stand on road charging?
I don't know on that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone else knows. Listen, Lord Fawkes, many thanks for your time this morning. Thank you for joining us on Talk. That's Lord Fawkes, Labour peer and former minister under Tony Blair. I'll let you respond to the last 20 minutes. 0344 499 1000. If you want to pick up on anything that Lord Fawkes said. Benedict Spence, what did you make of that?
Oh, there was a lot there to pick up on, though. I thought it was rather interesting right off the bat to say that what Andy Burnham stands for is the redistribution of wealth. Rather than, you know, the supporting the Labour movement of the working man, it's to take wealth from one person and give it to another. I'm sure that's going to calm a lot of people who currently feel massively overtaxed. But I also thought it was very interesting right there because, you know, Lord Fawkes, he did say he knew Ann Widdecombe, he respected her, he was, you know, very pleasant about her, and I do believe him. But I also thought it was rather interesting that he could not bring himself to criticise, let alone condemn, senior members of his own party who had said disgraceful things. This ultimately is why, you know, people like you and me, we're not going to be interested in politics.
Isn't he part of the problem?
Exactly. People like you and me, we're not involved in politics, and that means that if somebody who is vaguely on the same side as us says something that's disgraceful, we can say that person's a cretin. But in this instance, he can't. He can't bring himself to do it because that causes issues within the party. They have to close ranks. They all have to be on the same side. And also, frankly, it raises questions about whether or not he, like people like Lisa and Andy, like people like Wes Streeting, genuinely believe it. Why is he not criticising them for saying these things? Maybe because he also believes that reform actually are evil. And then when you hear the other things that he says about having a personal dislike towards Zia Yusuf, listen, maybe he had a bad run-in with him, maybe he didn't. But it certainly doesn't sound like he's very conciliatory towards reform right now. And to then sort of, you know, take it out and then go, oh, but look at the things that people say about me or about you and whatever. It doesn't matter. Random members of the public saying things, you know, because they dislike you, well, that's part of the course. You're in politics. When it's senior politicians saying these things and you can't bring yourself to say that's wrong and it demeans us all, what does that say about the state of the party and what it actually views as being the major problem? This is why I said these kind of attacks will continue on reform characters because they don't see that there's a moral issue at play here.
And given the performance there of Lord Fawkes, I mean, that just adds complete weight to your argument. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator alongside me through until 1 o'clock this afternoon here on Talk. Just a reminder, at midday, it's Prime Minister's Questions. It is the last PMQs under Sir Keir Starmer. We'll bring that to you live here at Talk.
Comments from a fool, really. I mean, you don't have to be intelligent to be a politician, but it does help. You know, if he's going to talk about it, he needs to, if he's going to make historical references, he needs to read history correctly. Argentina weren't even a country as when we occupied the islands. They were called the nation of states.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just turned 20 past 11. It's Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barks, in for Julia Hartley-Brewer, Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, with me in the studio as well. We'll be joined just after midday by Peter Cardwell, fellow Talk presenter, as we enjoy. I don't know, is that the right word to use, enjoy?
We don't know yet.
The final Prime Minister's questions with Sir Keir Starmer. Anyway, Benedict here for that, Peter Cardwell here for that, just after midday. In the meantime, let's look at this story that we seem to get from time to time when we have the government, or indeed the Health Secretary, just saying, you know what, we've got a lot of fatties in this country, of which, of course, I'm one of them. I am built for comfort, not for speed. And, you know, I do enjoy my beef and my beer and my sausages and my curry. So whenever I read stories about, well, we need to crack down on obesity, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to ban advertising. I do find myself thinking, what, really? You're going to ban advertising outdoors for so-called junk food? Is it really going to work? And how far do we go with letting any government of any political colour tell us how to live our lives? Someone who's going to have a view on this is a fabulous Chris Snowdon, head of lifestyle economics at the IEA. Hello, Chris.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. Good to talk to you this morning. Look, it seems to me it's another day, it's another case of the nanny state going, well, here's an idea, let's stop the billboards with pictures of donuts and burgers being displayed outdoors, because that's going to solve the UK's obesity problem.
Well, it's just endless, isn't it? It never stops. I mean, you would think, listening to these MPs, reading the reports in The Guardian today, that the UK government has done nothing to try and tackle obesity. It's done more than any other country in the world. I'm not exaggerating. It's only a few months since they brought in this draconian advertising ban on so-called less healthy food, which covers the entire internet all the time and covers all television programs and radio programs before 9 p.m. That's just ignored in this report because they don't really care about outcomes. They don't care about solving the problem. All these MPs care about is being seen to do something. And so they dismiss things like the sugar tax, which was meant to be one of the things that was going to solve this issue, ended up doing absolutely nothing. I suspect the advertising ban will do absolutely nothing. We've got ridiculous restrictions on where supermarkets can position various types of food. Can't have the cheese at the end of the aisle and can't have anything at the checkout and so on. We've got a whole plethora of these policies. Is it asking too much to at least wait a couple of years and see if any of them work before we extend them?
Yeah, and it does seem to me increasingly the default setting, not just of this government, you know, we need to look at the Conservatives and, you know, also extend this to Rishi Sunak with this ridiculous generational smoking ban that's going to come into force and come into effect and whatnot. The knee-jerk reaction from our politicians in this country is just to go, you know what we need to do? We need to ban stuff.
Yeah, it's been like that for years, I would say since the late Blair era. And politicians find this a lot easier and more appealing than actually getting to grips with the very serious problems that this country has. And I think this is the real point here. I mean, stories like this are just dime a dozen. You've got constant calls for banning all sorts of things. I suspect these MPs are trying to influence the incoming Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and see where he stands in it. I'm quite sure that Burnham will be the same as all the other ones, because all political careers end in failure. I think his political career will end in failure relatively quickly, and he will resort to doing these things to try and get a legacy, just like Rishi Sunak did with the generational tobacco ban. It's a great shame that politicians seem to think that the best way they can achieve a legacy is by restricting our freedom. But that's where we are, and unless the public start standing up against this, they're going to find that there's not much they're actually allowed to do in a few years' time.
I'm joined in the studio. I've got a guest with me through until 1 o'clock, Chris, Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, and he and I were talking about this earlier. And Benedict, you take the view that actually increasingly we have a growing number of the population who quite like being told what to do by the government.
Yeah, this is not just to do with lifestyle, but I think that there's a general attitude from a lot of people, which is that they recognise that certain things are bad. They don't necessarily want to be the ones that take the action. I was talking specifically when it comes to children here. You know, I think that, you know, when you're an adult, it's entirely up to you, but there is this sort of sense that is drilled into people, which is that you have to sort of raise your children a certain way, but people don't necessarily want the conflict, and that's ultimately where this comes from. They quite like the idea of the government coming in and banning junk food advertising in front of schools or whatever it is, or making it harder for them to get hold of fizzy drinks, because then it's not the parents' fault. Then they can say, well, what are you going to do? And it's the same with the proposed curfew on the use of the internet. They don't want to take away the phones or the tablets or whatever it is. They don't want to be the ones that come down hard on the kids. It actually suits a lot of them to then say, well, you know what's going to happen. The government's going to have to step in. Something's going to have to be done. The government is going to be the one to do it. And it's one of those things where you just sort of think, well, listen, if you actually want your children to be sort of internet free or fast food free, you are the parent. It is entirely within your power to do so.
Yeah.
But that requires you to have a little bit of backbone. And that's where I think a lot of this comes from. Just a general lack of spine to be found, which is why people are happy to outsource these things. The problem, of course, is then, as Chris has sort of demonstrated a lot with his research over the years, the government doesn't stop with the one thing that you say, oh, please take the responsibility out of my hands. It goes, well, if you liked this, how about this?
Exactly
how about this? And then maybe you turn around and go, but I don't like that. And he goes, well, it's too late. We've already done it. We're already on a roll here. So I think that therein lies the problem. People don't take enough personal responsibility.
I'm interested in what Benedict's just said there, Chris. Do you think part of the problem is we do have people in our population who quite like being told what to do?
Well, they're like other people being told what to do. The trouble is it becomes a circular firing squad, and eventually you will end up being a minority in some way. And so nobody actually gets what they want. And actually, if you ask people more in the abstract, do you think the government should boss you around? Do you think it's the government's job to tell you how to live your life? People overwhelmingly say no. It's just on these specific policies that they haven't thought through. The average length of time people spend answering a question in an opinion poll is 6 seconds. There's no way people are considering the economic cost of these policies. What does it mean, for example, to ban fast food outlets near a school? Well, the definition of near a school that's usually used by public health people is 400 metres. That covers virtually every inch of London. There are schools absolutely everywhere. The only place you'd be able to open up a KFC would be in the middle of the Thames, as far as I can see. But people don't realise that because they're misled by these campaigners. We've got to stop having government by opinion poll. I don't know how these policies are polling, but I suspect, as Benedict says, they probably poll quite well. Keir Starmer has basically had government by opinion poll for 2 years. Everything he announces is quite popular until it becomes unpopular when people think about it. If he announced a policy that was unpopular, he would do a U-turn on it. And yet he personally was incredibly unpopular because what people actually want is a leader who's going to look at, we don't want policy dictated by 2,000 weirdos who do YouGov polls. We need some experts in there, frankly, some people who are going to look at what the actual consequences and outcomes of these policies are going to be. Is it going to be a good thing for the economy, for example? Everybody wants to grow the economy. Are we going to grow the economy by stopping businesses opening up in the way suggested by these MPs? Clearly not. And this is just one in the death of 1,000 cuts that we've seen in this country, in which small pressure groups get together doing small things that damage the economy in a relatively small way, but they all add up to a huge cost to us.
All right, Chris, final question we're putting to our audience this morning here on Talk, asking the question, has the nanny state gone too far, and when should the government stop telling you how to live your life? So just give us a tasty little soundbite as to when you think it is acceptable for the government to tell people what to do and when they should frankly just do one.
Well, I go by the old John Stuart Mill thing of, your right to swing your nose, swing your fist ends at my nose. If there's direct harm being caused to a person and their property, then the government should intervene. But the fact of the matter is that we have pretty much nailed all the legislation needed to do that by about the mid-19th century. And most of what we've been doing since then has been excessive intervention, often trying to deal with the consequences of government failure.
Really good to have you on, Chris. Thank you. Chris Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economics Affairs. Always talks sense, always writes good stuff as well. Check him out online. It's just turned 11:30. It is Talk, the home of common sense. The 2026 World Cup is in full swing, and here at Talk we're celebrating in style. That's why we're giving you the chance to boost your bank balance with a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash. Sounds good? For a summer you won't forget, this is how you enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion, full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just turned 11:30. It's Talk, the home of common sense on a Wednesday morning. A reminder, just after midday, we have Prime Minister's Questions, which will be here, and we'll share it with you live from the House of Commons in Westminster. Significant, particularly, because it's the final Prime Minister's Questions featuring Sir Keir Starmer, the outgoing Prime Minister. I think it'll be interesting to see what the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, puts to Keir Starmer in his final PMQs. You'll hear it here just after midday, and also reaction from Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, who's in the studio with me on today's show, and also Peter Cardwell, Talk presenter. He'll be here just after midday as we chew over what is said in PMQs in the House of Commons. In the meantime, let's welcome Lord Dannatt, former head of the British Army, into our studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you again.
Pleasure to see you. Thank you for coming in. A couple of really interesting defence stories knocking around this morning, one of which I think might scare some people when we talk about this idea that we should be stockpiling food in case of a Russian cyber attack. Is this an overreaction?
No, it's not an overreaction. I think it's actually a very sensible thing to do. If we don't talk about these things and they happen, then people are in a state of shock. So I think for the government to try and get the narrative out there that there are a range of threats that threaten us in this country, whether it's cyber attack or we saw the poisoning of Skripal some time ago, all those kind of things. I mean, just imagine if there was a major attack on our power infrastructure and a whole city goes down and the refrigerators stop working, the telephones stop working. People have got to be prepared to react to that. So I think what we're going to see as part of the government messaging is to tell everyone to stockpile for 3 days of water and food, because these things might happen. We hope they won't happen, but if they do happen, best to be prepared, not to be shocked, but to be prepared.
So not a case of building a bunker in your back garden or anything, just a case of making sure you've got some pasta in the cupboards, a load of bottled water for 3 or 4 days, just in case something might happen.
Yes, I think that's the kind of thing. I think it's also linked to the government intending to hold a national defence exercise next year. And I think that's very sensible because all those plans existed during the Cold War years. And when we got into not only a peace dividend, when we slashed defence spending, but a lot of those plans were then put to one side. A lot of the nuclear bunkers that used to exist were sold and have become sort of tourist attractions. So I think it's very sensible that in the light of the increased threat potential from somewhere like Russia, that the government does have a national defence exercise again and gets the resilience message out.
Yeah, this is being dubbed as Operation Alberston Shadow, the largest home defence exercise in decades, taking place next year to better prepare the country for the possibility of war. The Cabinet Office saying the scenario would likely involve ministers as well as hundreds of officials from across government and the public sector. It will test responses to hybrid attacks under the threshold of conventional war. I'm keen to get your view, because I was reading something in one of the papers late last night or this morning that, I mean, we've increasingly become aware of cyber attacks against the United Kingdom, but this is happening it's happening on a daily basis.
Yes, it's happening on a daily basis, and they can be minor attacks. But if you think about the attack on Jaguar Land Rover, on Marks and Spencer, were these just unfortunate? Were these amateur hackers having a go, or was this a Russian-inspired thing? So if Russia is determined to disrupt, if Russia is determined to make its mark, then I think we have to be ready. Yes, I was a former Chief of the General Staff, Head of the Army, but I also was the founding Chairman of the National Emergencies Trust. And we were ready by the time the pandemic occurred in 2020 and launched our appeal, raised £100 million right across the country and got the money out to people who needed it very, very quickly. And we're talking with the Cabinet Office, and they're talking with other agencies to make sure that we are as joined up as we possibly can be in this country. And part of that is getting the message out so that if something awful happens, people aren't surprised, they've been expecting it, and they've made preparations.
So that's what all of this is about. It's not scaremongering, it's just getting the word out there that this is something that is happening, and you just need to be better prepared for it.
Absolutely right, and I think it's a very sensible thing to do, and I think the government is right to do it. Probably should have done it before, but getting on with it now.
Benedict, what's your reaction to this?
I mean, it's on one hand, I feel rather vindicated for stockpiling all the tin sardines that I have. You know, this is fantastic news, and actually, it's going to mean that I can justify this to people more. But it's one of those things where, sort of, as life becomes far more digitised, far more online, you do, I think, come up against the reality, which is a lot of people don't remember a time before this was the case. Yeah. So you know, you're going to have to be sort of talking to people about the need to be resilient and the need to sort of live your life, potentially, say, without access to the internet, without access to electricity for a period of time. That's going to cause huge amounts of problems that people didn't, in fact, have during the Cold War, for instance. And then you look at sort of certain trends that we have in this country. So, you know, you're talking about getting money out to people who might need it in case of an emergency. A lot of people only sort of use money that is digital now. They only bank online. And there has been a deliberate push, actually, to get people away from having physical tender. That's the sort of thing that can prove a real problem in, say, a massive cyber attack where all the online systems goes down. Basic things like commerce no longer work anymore.
Yeah, which is one of the things that the government is saying, is that have a small amount of cash, a couple of £100 at home, keep it in reserve, because if the ATMs go down, you've still got to trade, you've still got to buy things, and back to old-fashioned money.
It's quite a mindset change, isn't it? Because we have become a society of convenience. You know, tapping your card to pay for something, going to a 24/7 store to get a tin of beans or whatever. I mean, you know, I had a Scottish mother who lived in the Highlands, so it's ingrained in me. You have a cupboard and you have soup in there, you know, to last you a couple of weeks just in case there's a snowdrift or something horrific like that. But it is a massive mindset change, I think, for a big chunk of the population to be prepared in a certain way.
Yes, and if we don't do that, we're just actually piling risk on risk. And as we were just saying, we've become so reliant on digital communication, digital everything, that if that goes down, then we are not back to the Stone Age, but we're back to old-fashioned ways. Absolutely. And let's be prepared for it, because, you know, our communities have got to continue to exist, and it's the right thing to do.
Whilst I've got you in the studio, just a couple of other questions. I mean, there's been a lot of debate and a lot of coverage, quite rightly so, regarding the delayed Defence Investment Plan. We know it's now out. We have the new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis, who's kind of like, you know, got a few more quid, if you like, out of the Treasury.
Just a few.
Just a few, but not enough. I mean, what was your reaction when all of this played out? Because this was, I mean, this is long delayed. And actually, I found myself thinking this is really, really embarrassing. As someone who lives just down the road from Portsmouth Harbour, the home of the Royal Navy, the fact it took HMS Dragon almost, 3 weeks to get to Cyprus and stuff. I remember the 80s or Navy days where you'd go to the port and you'd see these magnificent fleets, magnificent vessels. It's not anywhere like where it used to be. What's your ultimate assessment of where we find ourselves with the dip?
Well, my assessment is, as I've been saying for quite some time, Keir Starmer in February at the Munich Security Conference said that we needed to spend 3% of GDP on defence. We're clearly not going to do that. The Ministry of Defence chiefs worked out we need 28 billion extra between now and 2029. We're not doing that. 15 billion has gone on the table, and some of that is double counted, and some of that is unaccounted for and got to be found in the next budget. And it is embarrassing. Our NATO allies are looking at us and saying, where's Britain in all this? They used to be the leaders in all this. Where are they? And our enemies are just smiling, rubbing their hands together and saying, Britain looks pretty weak. Now, Andy Burnham has got a real challenge here, because the defence lobby, of which I'm part, will not go quietly unless he's going to assert that the Strategic Defence Review of last year was wrong, and that the threats in it and articulated in it and the 62 recommendations made were wrong, that actually he's got to find the money. And whoever his Chancellor is, that's their number one task. Security of the nation is the top priority for government.
Let me ask you a blunt question. Do you think he gets it?
I don't know if he gets it. If he's got ears to hear, he'll have heard it. Whether he's processed it between his ears and his brain and it comes to his mouth, well, let's wait and see. I think he's a good man. I want to give him a chance. He told me a number of years ago he was going to come back to national politics, and he's going to do that. But he's got to do the right things and do them quickly.
A final question related to something that we've been talking about at length this morning over the last few days as well here at Talk. Your thoughts on the safety of public figures following the death of Ann Widdecombe. I don't want you to obviously put in a position where you over-speculate, but there is this conversation that is rightly being had now about whether or not we give enough support when it comes to security for MPs, former politicians. I mean, you're a well-known man as well. Do you think we need to just accept we live in quite disturbing times, and actually people who are politicians or public figures who serve in the public life need greater protection?
Yes, but of course giving them the kind of protection that really high-profile people get is just frankly impractical because it's just too expensive.
Right.
I think what anybody who's in public life and feels under threat needs to do is to take advice. I think we've got to separate out the keyboard warriors from the really dangerous people. Clearly it was someone very dangerous who killed Ann Widdecombe. Yeah. But there are a lot of people who make threats and they're just sitting at their keyboard making threats. I mean, I get a certain amount of mail that I'd rather not get, right. Some of which is complimentary and some of which is downright rude. Yeah. But you have to work out whether this is a serious threat or whether this is just a keyboard warrior.
I have to ask you.
And of course, advice is there.
Yeah, I have to ask you, when you get some stuff that you don't like receiving, you've not received death threats, have you?
I've not that I can remember.
Good, OK. And it's interesting because we had a press conference that we broadcast earlier here on Talk from Zia Yusuf, the Reform UK Home Affairs spokesperson, who was saying that if Reform get elected, one of the policies that they will implement is 24-hour security for our public's MPs and also former politicians. I mean, I'm interested in your view, whether or not that actually can ever be entirely effective. Can you protect someone's life 24/7?
Well, can you protect 650 sitting MPs and all those who previously were? I mean, if you're talking about armed guards, you're not just talking about one armed guard, we're talking about a rota of armed guards. Yeah. So you're talking about 3 or 4 times 650.
That's a lot of people.
Plus those, a lot of people, a lot of expense, and it's not practical. So I think this is where I come back to what I say. People who are receiving threats, they need to talk to the authorities, and the advice is there. The advice is there in Parliament. It's available to people in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, to sort out who is the focus of keyboard warriors and who is potentially the focus of someone much more dangerous. And the police need to get on to those ones that are dangerous, protect the people if they need to, but actually start making arrests and feeling collars.
Lord Dannatt, pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you for your time on this Wednesday morning. That's Lord Dannatt, former head of the British Army, here on Talk. We're counting down to midday, and midday is Prime Minister's Questions. The final Prime Minister's Questions with Sir Keir Starmer. We'll broadcast that live so you can hear what is said between Kemi Badenoch, leader of the opposition, and outgoing Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. That is happening at midday. Benedict Spence will be here for that as well to give some reaction alongside Peter Cardwell, Talk presenter. But up next, we travel to Portsmouth, the great naval city, and we talk about the local council tearing down England flags. This is Talk.
Thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election.
Count Binface apparently is now 5-1. Brilliant. You know, so look, I mean, you know, if I were being flippant, I'd say Count Binface's campaign is now well and truly up and running, and Reform are struggling to put a lid on it.
Let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barks. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator here. Are you watching the football later?
Absolutely.
You are?
Absolutely.
You're going to watch it in the pub or watch it at home?
I'll be watching in the pub.
Watching the pub?
Yeah.
OK.
I'll be getting rowdy.
Rowdy. Well, the atmosphere is part of the magic, isn't it? Well, let's hope that any St George flag, St George Cross flags are on display don't get torn down by your local council, because that's what's happened in the great city of Portsmouth. It's Portsmouth City Council, which is a Liberal Democrat council, and they ordered the removal of a St George Cross flag from outside a flat. This is before the semi-final against Argentina tonight. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see that happening right now. There you are. There's a couple of council operatives. We've had to blank out their faces, and he's just got a knife out of his pocket. It looks like a knife. Is it a knife? It's some kind of blade. Look, it's probably a cable. Oh, look, hacking away. And the flag, which is on the balcony of a block of flats in Portsmouth, has been removed. We can show you those pictures because they were captured by doorbell cam footage. And the Portsmouth City Council workers removing the national flag from the balcony outside an apartment earlier this week, yesterday, Tuesday. And this is a block of flats and the balcony which faces a car park in Portsmouth's Charles Dickens ward. And the move has drawn criticism from Reform UK councillors, including the one who joins us now. This is George Madgwick, Reform UK leader of Portsmouth City Council. George, hello.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm all right. I think our viewers and listeners are wondering what the hell's going on here.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? I mean, I couldn't believe it when a family friend sent me this video yesterday morning. I just had to post it because I was absolutely shocked about this. You know, we're the city, you may remember back in Christmas last year, that actually removed all the Christmas wreaths off of doors as well. So we've got a precedent for this kind of idiocy kind of behaviour, non-common sense approach. But yesterday morning really surprised me. Day before England's World Cup semi-final battle, and the council decided it would be common sense to remove a flag that's attached to a steel pole in a concrete building, which, by the way, is only the first floor up. We're not talking about a high-rise building here. We're talking about a concrete structure. It's not a fire safety concern. It's not a risk, and it's really disappointing to see.
It is disappointing to see, and this is a bit I don't understand. We were showing pictures earlier today on Talk of 10 Downing Street, which is currently decked out with 2 St George Cross flags and even some St George Cross flag bunting, which seems to me to suggest that there's a case of double standards going on here. So clearly it's not an issue if Downing Street wants to display the St George Cross flag in any form. However, some person who lives in a flat in Pompey wants to put the flag on their balcony. They're not allowed to do so.
I know, and we've got that beautiful photo of Kirby Street in London as well, decorated in 400 flags on a social housing estate in the exact style. There you go. You've got photos on your screen now for those that are watching on YouTube. You know, and that's exactly the same kind of build that we're talking about in Portsmouth. And it can be done there, it could be done here. But it's also hypocrisy because as I was talking to one of your researchers yesterday, I looked across the way. I looked at Portsmouth City Council building, and we too have a St George's Cross on a metal pole surrounded by concrete. The exact same scenario, and I was disappointed when the response come from Suella Braverman's letter. She wrote a letter to the leader of Portsmouth City Council, and the response that she got back was it was about fire safety and fire risk concerns. But that's just silly. I mean, it's so silly. I don't know about you, but across the world, I've never heard of a flag causing the death of anybody hung from a first floor building on a block of flats. It's just silly.
No, and you're right to make the point. I mean, I need to read out the response from the City Council before we wrap this up, George, and I'll do so in a second. But you're right, they're saying it's a fire safety issue. I'll come back to my previous point. It clearly isn't a fire safety issue outside number 10 Downing Street currently. Let's get into the reads of this, because this is not the first time. I mean, you know, here on Talk and indeed various newspapers have highlighted, sadly, over the last couple of years, various examples right across the United Kingdom, you know, Bristol, Oxfordshire and stuff, but local councils really have an issue with people displaying the flag of this country, either the Union Jack or the St George Cross. And I've never really understood it, because it seems to me to be a very British problem. Not that I say it's a problem, but it seems to happen a lot in this country. If you go to other countries around the world, if you spend time in America, you can drive down a road somewhere in America and people will have the stars and stripes on display, and for very good reasons, because they're proud of their country or they're a patriot or whatever. But it seems in this country we increasingly have politicians that tend to be on the left of the political spectrum who don't like people displaying the flag of this country. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I had this question this morning as well, and I simply don't understand the rationale behind it. I mean, a lot of it, I believe, is virtue signalling. A lot of people on the left believe that it causes offence when it really doesn't. I mean, let's be honest about it. It doesn't cause offence, but people believe it does. It's a lot of virtue signalling to try and be inclusive. That's what they say. It's inclusivity. However, my argument is that it actually causes more division. I mean, we're here talking on your show about this situation, which is causing now division due to their actions, and people in Portsmouth are furious. This video, not just on my profile, but across multiple profiles, has been viewed 4 million times since midday yesterday. 4 million times. And this has caused division, it's caused debate, it's caused an argument. So the thing that they're trying to fight against, supposedly, which is division, is something they're causing inadvertently. We had another situation where, I don't know if you remember, when everyone was going around painting flags last year. Now, I don't for one support vandalism of any description, but there was a nice example in Portsmouth where someone did a zebra crossing and it was done very professionally, very well, and the council removed it the day after. However, they repainted their rainbow flag on the floor. Now, the excuse they gave for destroying the St George's flag that was painted on the zebra crossing is that it'd be distracting to drivers.
Right.
But then my argument is, why are you painting rainbow flags on a road just adjacent to it? It's hypocrisy, it's double standards, and they've got shame for some reason in our national flag.
It does seem like a case of double standards. You're the reform leader of Portsmouth City Council. Presumably you've tackled your Lib Dem colleagues regarding this. What are they telling you?
That all the time they either come down to a few things. Number one, they say fire safety, and they always go back to Grenfell, which is an appalling thing for them to try and reference. It's completely different. It's not comparable.
No, well, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Really, they refer to Grenfell, that tragedy where the cladding. Well, I mean, I covered that story as a journalist, and I mean, I still, you know, to this day, I mean, I can't. It's horrific. It's awful what happened. So they talk about Grenfell, and they talk about a tragedy of so many people losing their lives because of the incorrect or the inflammatory cladding used on that tower block. They compare that to someone having a flag on the balcony of their flat.
Yes, yesterday afternoon, one of the Liberal Democrat councillors came to me and compared it to the Grenfell fire and said that I was being naive and irresponsible by posting this video and trying to encourage people putting flags on their flats. And they referenced Grenfell. They said, you know what happened in Grenfell, and etc.
That is insulting, and that is disgusting.
Terrible. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And, you know, that's the type of things that they try and get you down to. And I'm prepared for it. You know, we all know, anybody with common sense knows that that's not a comparable thing in any capacity whatsoever. One was a tragedy. As you know, you researched this and you said you covered it yourself. High-rise building, cladding. Yeah. This is a first floor, 3-story block, covered in concrete. There is, and it's a flag. There is literally no fire risk at all. The other thing they say is, well, it's in the tenancy agreement. The tenancy agreement says that you can't have any form of flags displayed on communal areas. Well, okay, you know, if that's what you want to say, but use your discretion. Be sensible. We're a day before the semi-final, for the love of God. Yeah. It's insulting to be removing our national flag. People want to support this. And the other thing that they come up with about is private property. And this is one of the things I fought back on. They said, well, I display my St George's flag prideful on my private property, but my property is private. I can do what I want on private property. And I said, so what you're doing is you're essentially saying that if you are not as privileged to own your own property or rent your own property and you do use social housing, that you're not allowed to display proudly your national flag. You know, the hypocrisy here is crazy. I think it's double standards, and anybody with common sense can see that this is a shocking story.
And I think also we need to mention, I mean, I live just down the road from you. I live in Chichester in West Sussex, so Portsmouth is not far away. A great city, home of the Royal Navy, a very, patriotic city as well, which really adds salt to the wounds, doesn't it? Because I remember being in Pompey when the fleet went off to reclaim the Falklands in 1982. You know, there are a lot of very proud people, proud of their country, who live in Pompey and stuff. And to me, it just seems this move by Portsmouth City Council completely disregards the kind of heritage of the city.
And this is why it causes conflict. The Liberal Democrat administration have made questionable decisions that are against what the population of Portsmouth wants on many occasions. And as you said, we're a proud Navy city. I mean, look, the other day we sent HMS Dragonoff from here to go over to the Iran war. You know, we are still a very prominent Navy city. And yes, constantly the Liberal Democrats are going against the will of the people. We become a council of sanctuary, a city of sanctuary, which you've probably heard before. They polled residents, 4,500 people responded, 91% of people said they didn't want to become a council of sanctuary, and they did it anyway. You know, they keep making these decisions that are in complete contradiction to what the people in Portsmouth want. We're a proud city, we're a naval city, we're a city of veterans and heroes, and we can't display our flag. It's disgraceful.
George, thank you for your time. George Madgwick, Reform UK leader at Portsmouth City Council. Here comes his statement regarding this from the leader of Portsmouth City Council. His name is Councillor Steve Pitt. He says, we understand residents want to show their support for England and we're pleased to see the community getting behind the team. However, our fire safety policy, reinforced by Hampshire Fire and Rescue and their Fire Safety Act, requires communal balconies to be kept clear of anything that could catch fire, spread fire or block safe access. This applies to all items placed on balconies, including flags and banners. We have consulted with Hampshire Fire and Rescue and they agree with our approach to keeping communal balconies clear in the interest of fire safety. Residents are welcome to display flags inside their homes, such as in the window, where they can still show their support while helping to keep everyone safe. Very quickly, Benedict Spence, your reaction to this story?
We all know that this is a load of nonsense, is the thing, when it comes to the removing of flags. And the double standards that were highlighted there, for instance, when it comes to the sort of the removal of ones that have been painted on the ground and replacement with rainbow flags, it is what is considered an acceptable or fashionable view. Ultimately, there is something that is seen as a little bit grubby, a little bit gauche about being patriotic in your own country. This is not new, goes all the way back. George Orwell talked about it in The Lion and the Unicorn. It is what is considered acceptable. Ukraine flags, rainbow flags, any other flag, Palestine flag, absolutely fine. Your own flag, no, 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 can't have that. That's a little bit working class, a little bit grubby, a little bit racist. We don't like that here. It's disgraceful and we need to get away from this attitude.
So a case maybe of two-tier flag displaying. Benedict, thank you. Benedict staying with us after midday. We're also going to be joined by talk presenter and political guru Peter Cardwell as well, as we gear up for Prime Minister's questions, the final one before Parliament rises for summer recess, but also, more interestingly, the final PMQs featuring Sir Keir Starmer, outgoing Prime Minister. You'll hear it here after midday on the home of common sense as we head into Wednesday afternoon. It's Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Wednesday afternoon is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barks, and with you through until 1 o'clock this afternoon. In the studio with me, Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, Peter Cardwell, Talk TV presenter, as well as we witness and commentate on and give reaction to the final Prime Minister's questions featuring Sir Keir Starmer. Let's cross over to the chamber of the House of Commons.
Movement. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I have an important appointment with the television at 8 o'clock this evening.
Graham Stewart. May I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about Ann Widdecombe, take this opportunity to thank him for his public service and wish him and his family all the best for the future. Most of us, Mr. Speaker, can only dream of playing the role of Jude Bellingham, scoring the winning goal, leading our team to victory. Yet the Prime Minister did it. But politics, like football, is a ruthless game, and he's now been handed a red card by the 400 dodgy referees behind What advice, Mr. Speaker, does this Prime Minister have for the Right Honourable Member for Makerfield to ensure that he, unlike himself, doesn't end up with an early bath?
But, Mr. Speaker, I think that's the first and sadly probably the last time I'll be compared to Jude Bellingham. But I thank him for that. And on the question of red cards, I can't tell him how much incoming I had a week ago Monday after President Trump intervened for their red card, for me to get the England red card adjusted. Just for the record, Mr. Speaker, I didn't attempt. But for my successor and for the England team, I won't give advice. I will simply give my wholehearted support. And, Mr. Speaker, just for the record, I don't care what the score is tonight, as long as we win.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I take this opportunity to thank the Prime Minister for his many years?
Come on, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise for the third time. It was an honour to march with people from across Watford on a peace walk in my constituency recently, because earlier this year we saw an attack on our high street where a fire was lit at a Jewish-owned shop and sprayed with anti-Semitic graffiti. Additionally, mosques in Watford have been subject to Islamophobic attacks and intimidation. So I welcome my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister's additional support to deal with anti-Semitism and anti-religious hatred. And does he agree with me that this House must come together to stand united against those that would seek to divide us?
Prime Minister. Well, can I thank him for his question and for his hard work? And he reminds us that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred are a poison. We ripped anti-Semitism out of the Labour Party. And I've worked as Prime Minister to root it out of our country. And that's why just this week, Mr. Speaker, we invested a record £250 million to protect our Jewish communities. And we're using the new powers we introduced to designate the IRGC, going after those who incite violence on our street. Everyone deserves to live with security, dignity and freedom. And that is a fight that I and every Labour government and across this House will never give up on.
Kemi Ben, the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, can I start by thanking the Prime Minister for the way he responded to the murder of Ann Widdecombe last week. This is the first opportunity I've had on the floor of the House to commemorate her life. A lot has been said about how she died. I want to focus on celebrating the life she lived. She was a woman of high principle, profound beliefs with a wicked sense of humour, a wonderful combination of being a serious person who did not take herself too seriously. She changed her faith from Anglican to Catholic, and from the Conservative Party to the Brexit Party, but she always remained part of the Conservative family. You may not always have agreed with her, but Ann Widdecombe was a woman who said what she meant and meant what she said. Hers was an honesty that made our politics better. Her wit and forthrightness sat alongside a deep humanity and decency. She had wonderful turns of phrase. She said, we need less political correctness and more political courage. She said, if we deny our culture, become nothing and everything, that weakens us. And finally, Mr. Speaker, she also said, it is a truth universally unacknowledged at Westminster that there is life after politics. So with that in mind, I turn to this Prime Minister's final questions. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make sure that I got the tone right today. So I looked back at his final questions to Boris Johnson, and luckily for him, I plan to be much gentler than he was that day. Week after week, the Prime Minister and I have clashed at this dispatch box and rarely agreed on anything. But there is one thing I did admire. When President Zelensky was attacked in the White House, the Prime Minister showed leadership and invited him to Downing Street. That was the right thing to do. Ukraine is on the front line in the battle for freedom. So does the Prime Minister agree that cross-party support for their cause must endure?
Prime Minister. Can I start by joining her in a tribute to Ann Widdecombe? I know that the hurt is keenly felt across all her friends and family, but it's particularly keenly felt by political colleagues in the Conservative Party for many years and in Reform as well. And that's why one of the first things I did on Friday was to phone the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader and Deputy Leader of Reform to express my condolences and to try to act in a cross-party manner, because I knew how much this would hurt them and their parties and many people in their party. And I thank them for taking that call in the spirit that they did last Friday. I thank her for her comments about Ukraine. We have stood united on Ukraine in this House. We supported the last government in the approach that they took, and we've taken that approach on. That meeting with President Zelensky, the day after he was evicted from the Oval Office, he left alone. He got a plane. We got him to come to London, and I asked him to come to Downing Street straight away. And I walked out to meet him. I gave him a hug, and then I showed him what was in the street, which was many people who had come thinking that he was visiting Downing Street, and the moment he got out the car and hugged me, they cheered on the top of their voices, the British people, to tell President Zelensky exactly what they thought of him and the way that he had been treated. And that was a really emotional moment, because it was the first human contact he had effectively had outside of his immediate team since he left the Oval Office. I had a meeting with him to tell him that in this country we will stand with him and Ukraine, and I didn't let him leave alone. I walked him out to his car, because we don't let people in Britain walk out of our buildings alone. We escort them out.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for that answer? And no doubt he will be disappointed that he won't be emulating his hero, Harold Wilson, in winning multiple elections. However, we all hope that he may be about to emulate him in another way, by being the Prime Minister when England win the World Cup. That is something that every single one of us in this House should get behind, especially the SNP. Mr. Speaker, as leader of the opposition, the Prime Minister led his party to a landslide after a historic defeat. I fully intend to do the same. But if you want to lead this country, you should set out your plans to do so. We have. But one politician intends to spend the summer avoiding scrutiny, refusing to set out his plans. So does he not agree that what the country deserves is a televised debate between Nigel Farage and Count Binface?
Mr. Speaker, they intend to spend the summer arguing with the bin. My advice to everyone is put your vote in the bin. Mr. Speaker, can I just say that I'm delighted today that we are joined in the gallery by some of the people I've met across the country in opposition and in power. And these are the people in the gallery today who are in my mind's eye. People like Trevor and Lewis. They worked together at JLR for over 30 years, and I visited them just before we got the deal with America when tariffs were threatened, and I faced the entire workforce that day who were very, very concerned that they were going to lose their jobs because the tariffs would not be possible for JLR. When we went back, when we got the deal, I took the call from President Trump at JLR in Solihull so that they could hear the deal and they knew exactly what it would mean for them. The only mistake I made was putting it on loudspeaker, which of course is always a slightly unpredictable thing to do when you've got President Trump on the other end. But luckily he agreed the deal and the cheer went out. But these are the people across the galleries who are here with us today that are always in my mind's eye.
Go, Ben.
Mr. Speaker, I know how much the Prime Minister has come to enjoy our exchanges. In fact, in the King's speech last month, he told me that on difficult days, my input was always a ray of sunshine. He might not have answered many of the questions I asked him, but at least he turned up. It is important to respect Parliament. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that his successor should come to this place and answer questions rather than scurrying away for the summer?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister, I've participated in over 60 PMQs. Always a pleasure, always something to look forward to. And I've answered, or at least given answers, on 2,800 times, and I'm sure she will question my successor in the same way. And I'm sure she'll forgive me if I just mention one or two others who are in the gallery who have been affected by the decisions we've made, because Billy, who is sitting in the gallery in front of me, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2023. She was there, Mr. Speaker, when we launched our plan for change, and she's been a tireless advocate for better cancer care. Billy joins us today from the special needs school where she works in London, and I'm pleased to tell the House that Billy's cancer is in remission.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for that answer and paying tribute to so many of the people who he has been able to help. In fact, I remember when I started this job, the Prime Minister was very helpful to me, saying that I wouldn't last the year. Life comes at you fast. He spent a long time laughing that I'd lost control of my party. I think he should have been paying attention to his backbenchers instead of mine. But everyone in politics would do well to remember how quickly political fortunes can change. I know that he has been asked and he's being diplomatic, but on that note, does he have any advice for his successor?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will give my wholehearted support to my successor. I want this Labour government to be a success. I want our country to be a success. I shall give my support privately if asked for, not publicly when not asked for. But, Mr. Speaker, I also, if I may, wanted to draw attention to Pooja, who's with us in the gallery today with her daughter. I first met Pooja in a cafe at the back of Euston Station, and she told me about her son Ronan, who was murdered when he was 16, having just done his GCSEs. I have to say, as a father of two teenagers, I found that very hard to hear. His killer, who was also a teenager, collected a ninja sword and a machete from his local post office. He bought them online using a parent's credit card, a fake name with no ID checks. And when I heard that, I said to Pooja that I would campaign with her to get the law changed and make a commitment and a promise to her. And that's why we passed Ronan's Law, driven by Pooja's inspirational campaigning. And today I'd just like the opportunity to thank her for that.
Mr. Speaker, that is a lovely statement that the Prime Minister has just made to Pooja. I'm sure the whole House will agree. I think the whole House will also agree that he gave a very diplomatic answer to the question I asked him on advice to his successor. And having heard it, I say this to Labour MPs with as much goodwill as I can muster. We have been where you are. Changing Prime Minister is not a silver bullet. Indeed, it may be that the Labour Party's troubles are only just beginning. Solving the fundamental problems in this country will require difficult decisions. And you also need to know how to get things done. The Prime Minister once said that when he pulled the levers, nothing happened. Why did he think that was?
Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, we did pull the levers. We pulled the levers to stabilise the economy, and we've stabilised the economy. We pulled the levers to strengthen our public services, and NHS waiting lists are coming down at the fastest rate for 17 years. We pulled a big lever on child poverty, and this government will be doing more on child poverty than any government ever, including previous Labour governments. We put the biggest investment into defence and security, and our international standing has been restored. But, Mr. Speaker, we also pulled the lever on the individual cases that matter, including individuals like Carla, who's in the gallery today. She it was one of the parents that came to see me about online harm and the harm it can do to our young children, and that's why we banned social media for under-16s. And Daniel, who's also here with his son, who spoke to me many times about the struggles he's had with the cost of living and the need for a safe and secure home for every family and every child to grow up in. They're the people, Mr. Speaker, that matter more to me than anything else, because it's their lives that I think about when we make decisions in this government.
Final question, Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for my last question, I mean, the Prime Minister may not think so now, but it is a tribute to him that not a single sitting Labour MP could beat him. Not the member for Ashton-under-Lyne, who couldn't count her taxes, not the member for Sheffield-Heeley, who couldn't count how many phones she'd lost, and definitely not the member for Ilford North, who couldn't count to 81. This is my last exchange with the Right Honourable Gentleman, and I know how much his wife and children mean to him, and that they are in the gallery today. As everyone here knows, our families make a huge sacrifice for our choice to enter public life. So I hope he will allow me to draw our time together to a close by thanking them for the love and support they have given him throughout his time in office.
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her very much for that? It is the last question I'll face from the Leader of the Opposition, and so let me wish her well and her family. We have had robust exchanges across this dispatch box, but she has extended kindness to me privately at very difficult times, including when there was an attempt to burn down our family home, which deeply affected my family. She reached out to me. And when my brother died of cancer, she reached out to me privately, not across this dispatch box. And I thank her for that and the tribute that she's just made to my wife and children, who mean the world to me. I do thank her for that. She knows this is robust, and it has to be robust, and that's the way politics is done. But the kindnesses that sit behind it privately are often just as powerful, if not more powerful, and I thank her for that. I also stood at that dispatch box, Mr. Speaker, for 4 years as Leader of the Opposition. I know firsthand it's the most difficult job in politics, and that is what she is doing. When I did so, Mr. Speaker, we had just lost the 2019 election, which nearly broke my party. It was the worst result since 1935, and we were found to be institutionally anti-Semitic. And, Mr. Speaker, I picked up our party, I turned it round, I made a promise to rip anti-Semitism out of my party, and I did. I turned my party to face the country, and we won a landslide Labour general election. And after 2 years, We've stabilised the economy. We have invested heavily in our public services. We've put better protections in for children, particularly on child poverty. We've strengthened our defence and we've enhanced our international reputation. I'm proud to leave this country in a better shape than I found it.
And that's where we'll leave the final exchange between Leader of the Opposition Kemi Badenoch, Conservative Party leader, and outgoing Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. It is talk. It's just turned 20 minutes past midday. What we need is a couple of political titans, of political commentary to just chew over the last 20 minutes, which is just as well, because we have two of them in the studio here. We have Peter Cardwell, talk presenter. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
With your two mobile phones, I noticed.
Yes, indeed.
Old habits die hard.
Like a drug dealer, yes, indeed.
And your Diet Coke. I've been reading about your Diet Coke in your book.
Oh, great. Oh, you're reading it.
What's that, can, 7, 8 today?
It's can number 2 today, actually, yeah. So it's only 20 past 12.
Good to have you in, and also Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, who's been here since 10 o'clock this morning. Peter, we'll start with you. I mean, that was very warm, wasn't it? Very giving.
Yes, very kumbaya, and that was fine. I mean, that was probably, given the brutality which Keir Starmer is leaving politics, Kemi Badenoch didn't need to do anything. She said when it was clear he was going, she was pretty harsh and said, look, he's been a disastrous Prime Minister. I'm glad he's going. Andy Burnham won't be any better. And there are a few jibes at Andy Burnham in there, and she really used that exchange to attack Andy Burnham. That's really the only person she attacked, apart from a few jibes about various people at the end there, including Lou Haig, and her mobile phones, and Angela Rayner and her taxes and so on. They, of course, both of them could be back in the cabinet this time next week. So it'll be fascinating to see. For Keir Starmer, I think he was very dignified there. He talked quite a lot about a number of people he'd invited to the gallery for his last time as Prime Minister. He will go on Monday, but of course Friday is the coronation of Andy Burnham. That'll happen around 12. We'll have full coverage here on Talk, and then on Monday the switchover between Prime Minister and the new Prime Minister. Let's hope that is totally overshadowed by the fact that England have just won the World Cup.
Absolutely. Benedict, your thoughts on what we've just seen and heard?
It was far too conciliatory for my liking.
You wanted a bit more rough and tumble.
A bit more poison.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a fan of blood sports, and that's what I came here for, and I got absolutely none of that whatsoever. Obviously, I think it was always going to be a bit like that, and, I don't think Kemi Badenoch necessarily needed to stick the boot into Andy Burnham, preemptively, because she'll get plenty of opportunities to do that. It's going to be a very, very difficult couple of months for him. He's not particularly well prepared, and we all know that. But, it's a curious thing, isn't it? We're touching upon it right at the end there, when the Prime Minister thanked Kemi Badenoch for being, thoroughly decent to him in particularly difficult moments, without sort of wanting to dwell too much on what happened to poor Ann Widdecombe a couple of days ago. I think that was always going to be the case, that this wasn't going to be, particularly pugnacious. If nothing else because of that, I think it would have been a pretty poor reflection.
Would have been inappropriate.
And I think it was important and good that the Prime Minister did remind everybody in the House that actually even your political opponents are capable of, and expect, I think, frankly, that sort of humanity to be extended to them. And I think that was an important thing to say.
All right, more analysis and reaction from Peter and Benedict in a few moments' time. This is Talk.
I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea. thereby forcing a by-election.
Count Binface apparently is now 5-1. Brilliant. You know, so look, I mean, you know, if I were being flippant, I'd say Count Binface's campaign is now well and truly up and running, and Reform are struggling to put a lid on it.
Let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barks. This is Talk. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator in the studio. Peter Cardwell, Talk presenter, as we just do a little bit more reaction to the last ever Prime Minister's Questions featuring outgoing Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. We know that Kemi Badenoch started with a tribute to Ann Widdecombe, which was right, which was proper. She also made the point that she was going to be slightly more gentler towards Keir Starmer than he was when Boris Johnson was the outgoing Prime Minister. And I thought it was really interesting the way she mentioned about Zelensky as well.
Yes, that was important, I think, and then important to Keir Starmer, because that is something where he feels he's really made a difference. He got the Legion d'Honour yesterday. Also, he has said that, he said yesterday, as long as I have breath in my body, he was going to advocate for Ukraine and advocate for what Zelensky wants to do. So it's one of the few things that the Conservatives and Labour have been basically as one on when it came to Ukraine. It was probably appropriate that she brought it up today in this very conciliatory PMQs.
Yeah, and a little bit of rough and tumble, not aimed at Starmer, Benedict, but also at Andy Burnham, who has avoided a massive amount of scrutiny so far, won't be appearing in the Commons before summer recess, but becomes our Prime Minister on Monday.
Yeah, it's really reassuring to know that we've learnt the lessons of the last general election, that not paying attention to the person that's going to become Prime Minister, because it's easier to stick the boot into the outgoing one. You know, that's what the public really want. They really don't want to know what's going to happen, so that it, you know, comes as a nice surprise when everything goes wrong. They're like, ooh, I feel alive again.
But he's got a nice T-shirt, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, of course, and lovely eyelashes.
Lovely
lashes.
lashes.
Honestly, I do find it very frustrating. I've already touched upon this earlier on in the show, that actually the whole furore around digging in on Nigel Farage's financial arrangements, which, let's be clear, justified questions to be asked, but doing that at the exact moment that, oh, there's a man that's literally just being walked by the hand through the doors of number 10.
He gets a free
and nobody's
pass.
asking any
He
questions.
gets a free pass.
Honestly, it just shows you, I think, the lack of seriousness about how we actually take the people that are, you know, not threatening to be Prime Minister, actually going to be Prime Minister. Yeah, that, honestly, when will we learn? I don't know. It doesn't happen on all stations, obviously, this one being, you know, particularly one because we do ask the question, but the fact that, you know, that is the sort of the standard, which is pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes.
Let's just focus on
turning
this.
the wheel.
Yeah, it's not gone down particularly well, has it? Especially then with what's happened this week. Nigel Farage turning around saying, I need the money for security. Everybody going, nah, you're a liar, you're bent. And then, oh, good Lord, something dreadful happens like that. And then you don't really have much of a line to spin anymore, do you?
Interesting you made a Wizard of Oz reference when there is now actually a Tin Man in our politics as well. There's a very, very good line which you may have missed from Neil Coyle. I don't know if you've come across this. Neil Coyle is quite a controversial Labour backbencher, and he's the one person who's nominated someone who's not Andy Burnham. He's nominated Catherine West, who raised hackles a few weeks ago, but his quote is fantastic. He was asked by the political newsletter Playbook, a great journalist called Noah Keat, about why he nominated Catherine West when obviously there's no point because Andy Burnham's the leader, and Neil Coyle said there was no room left to crawl into Andy Burnham's backside.
That's a great quote. Let's get a view on Sir Keir Starmer and possibly his legacy. This is Sue in London. Hello, Sue.
Hello, gentlemen, and good afternoon. I wish you hadn't made me laugh then, because honestly, I've been so angry ever since I heard the Prime Minister, Harmer Starmer, go and say he had the nerve to say that he's got anti-Semitism out of the Labour Party. Jews are more frightened in this country than ever before. Jews are leaving this country by droves. The anti-Semitism is through the roof. How dare he lie in front of millions of people like that on his last day? The man has no shame, and I don't think Burnham's going to be any better.
What do you think, Peter?
that's a fair point, but I do think the Labour Party is better with anti-Semitism than it was when Keir Starmer took over. But Sue's absolutely right. There is a real problem with anti-Semitism in this country. It has become normalised. There's so much anti-Semitism, still a bit in the Labour Party, huge in the Green Party as well, some other parties as well. And I do think that Sue's absolutely right. There are people leaving in droves. There's so many people who are moving to Israel and other places because they just don't feel welcome in this country.
I think Starmer did what he could given what he inherited, but the fact of the matter is whether or not they, members of the Labour Party wish for there to be an eradication of anti-Semitism, there are now demographic changes in certain constituencies around this country that mean that anti-Semitism, hatred of Israel, is politically expedient, and at the very least it's wise to not speak out against that, because otherwise people will vote against you. And I have to say, for a party that goes on so much about lecturing us on what British values are, it is remarkable that so many Labour MPs refuse to engage with the fact that we have allowed into this country millions of people who hold the, I would say, distinctly un-British value of believing that Jews are less than human, and have absolutely nothing to say about that because it might impact their electoral prospects. I think that's disgraceful.
Got more reaction coming in from our viewers and listeners here at Talk. This is Troy. PMQ, sorry, far too much sucking up to the worst PM we have ever had, says Troy in Suffolk. James says, listening to PMQs, I see the uni party is alive and well. Donna's saying, watching the Commons on Talk, Starmer is such a delusional idiot. These so-called elite politicians are pathetic. Shame he didn't invite Rihanna White's mum to sit in on his super moral gallery. I'm so sick of all of this. And Paul Hamilton says, Britain will never be a success with Labour in power. Earlier, we broadcast live a press conference from Westminster with Zia Yusuf, Home Affairs spokesperson for Reform UK. He said a lot of stuff which we talked over at great length. A lot of it really making the point that over the last several months and over the last few years, some of the remarks made, not only to Nigel Farage, but Ann Widdecombe, were made by senior Labour politicians, and he was really calling them out. Let's take a call on this. This is Barry in Norwich. Hello, Barry.
Good morning, Duncan. Good afternoon, Duncan.
What would you like to say, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on Zia Yusuf's press conference, right? First of all, I'd say you would never hear any of that coming out of the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, yeah? And, I think he really showed statesman-like character there. I listened to it, and for him to offer all MPs, no matter what party they are from, full protection, I thought was very noble of him to do that. Yeah, not that I agree with it, to be honest with you, but like...
let me ask you, Barry, why didn't you agree with it? Just for people who didn't... Well, hang on, let me just give me a sec, because people might not have heard or seen Zia Yusuf. He finished off his press conference by saying if Reform UK win power, that they will offer 24-hour security to all 650 MPs and even former politicians. You don't agree with that?
Well, I do with the MPs to a degree, right?
To what degree, just out of interest?
Rather controversial here, right? All these undocumented men that these MPs from all parties have allowed into this country and put the security of the British people at risk. Perhaps the British people need a bit of security. Yeah, as well.
Well, I heard this argument yesterday and the day before when I was here doing this show. Surely we should be protecting everyone, not just MPs and people in this country, but everyone right across the board. It's not either or, is it?
Well, it looks like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, right. You know, when these young men come off boats and they attack young girls and women and they murder hotel workers and stuff like that, there's no protection given to them or their families.
Yeah, I understand the frustration, but I mean, what I'm keen to do is just get your view on that particular suggestion of a policy about 650 MPs getting round-the-clock protection. I mean, I think we live in very serious times now when it comes to protecting and ensuring the safety of MPs. Is that something that you would support?
Well, I mean, not. The Prime Minister and all the front bench of either party, they get all protection. But where's the money going to come from? Yeah, right, to protect every MP and every Are we going to have MPs shut off from the public? Are we going to have no more surgeries? I mean, part of our democracy is to have easy access to...
Well, that's the point, isn't it? I think the argument could be made that you would still have constituency surgeries and MPs might feel safer to have them if there was this round-the-clock protection that Zia Yusuf has been suggesting if reform get into government. Peter, I mean, you've worked in politics for many, many years at various different levels. It's quite interesting there, Barry's view, this kind of idea, which is, well, you know, maybe MPs shouldn't get increased security because as a nation, as a population, we're under threat. We don't feel secure. You heard what he had to say. I mean, I take the view that we need to do something, don't we?
I think we do. It's an interesting thing that 6 members of the cabinet get round-the-clock security from the very brave officers that work with them at the Home Office and the Northern Ireland Office from the Royalty and Specialist Protection branch of the Metropolitan Police. The question is, do you give that to all MPs? That would be incredibly expensive.
Because that's what Zia Yusuf was suggesting.
Yeah, and it would cut them off, I think, from a lot of their constituents. Right. I do know a lot of MPs now never advertise where they're going to be, and if they have constituency surgery, they have security there, or they have sometimes metal detectors, depending on the MP. It would be incredibly expensive. I think it would remove MPs from their constituents to a greater degree, which is one of the best things about British democracy. So I think it's probably impractical. And also, do you then extend that to former MPs? What about celebrities, judges, high-profile people? You know, what footballers? I mean, what do you do?
That's a good point. Where do you draw the line, Benedict?
We don't live in Italy in the 70s. We don't live in Colombia in the 80s. Actually, why is it that we're getting into a position where the activities and decisions taken by politicians are then leading to a situation where those politicians are at risk, and the solution is to go, well, let's double down and let's have a security state? That's not actually what we want at all. And this is why I'm saying, I'm not saying for a second that they deserve the threats that they receive. No. But I am saying that political decisions or inactivity, a refusal to take difficult decisions, has consequences. Now, if, as we touched upon earlier, you decide you're going to double down on rhetoric and call everybody you dislike a Nazi, sooner or later people are going to take that as a justification for violence. At the same time, if you allow in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who do not hold your values, and many of them actually adhere to an ideology that is diametrically opposed to the system that they are moving into, and you refuse to try to assimilate those people or to condemn them, or frankly to be as heavy-handed as they are towards them in the countries that they come from, and there's a reason that they're leaving those countries in the first place, well, you shouldn't be surprised then when you come under threat. There is a reason why the Gulf states and North African states are particularly heavy-handed with members of the Muslim Brotherhood, because they are dangerous. In this country, we are not, because we have a very liberal, oh, I'm sure they'll just magically become British overnight sort of attitude. That is a very short-sighted one. Sooner or later that has to change. And again, sorry.
Any security expert will also tell you, as you probably know, Benedict, sorry to interrupt you, that the Muslim Brotherhood is their headquarters is basically in the UK. The final point just on Zia Yusuf is that he's absolutely right to call this out, but he also called Conservative MPs traitors recently, and I think he should take a look at himself when he uses that kind of language. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I think that's the key point, is that we have, in our view, which is that we have to be tolerant of everything, we are tolerant of ideologies that are not just intolerant of our way of life, but actively work to undermine it. That's not actually how democracy is meant to work, especially if the majority of people who were here to begin with say, we don't want that. You can't then go, yeah, but our values say that you have to be tolerant of this. That's not how a society is meant to operate.
Benedict, you're staying with me through until 1 o'clock. Peter Caldwell, you're departing. And you're back on the air at 7 tonight.
That's right, 7 till 10. I'm very hopeful people will be watching between 8 and 10, but I fear there may be a slight distraction there.
Many people in Scotland, Wales and Northern
Ireland and beyond will be very well.
Scottish audience figures are going to go through.
The Argentina fans, yes.
Peter, pleasure to have you in. Thank you,
Duncan.
Benedict, staying here through until 1. We're going to talk the World Cup next. Who would have thought it? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ian Collins here from 1 this afternoon at the home of Common Sense. This is Talk. Now, you may be aware that there's quite an important football match happening later. England versus Argentina, kick-off 8 p.m. I said this over the last couple of days. I'm not going to pretend to be a football expert, which is why I surround myself with people here at Talk who are. We'll look at the match in more detail from a sporting point of view just ahead of 1 o'clock. But something quite interesting is being suggested, if I've understood it correctly, which is if you watch the World Cup tonight, this evening, with your partner, not only is it going to be good for your relationship, but I'm kind of thinking if England wins, you might be on a promise tonight. Let's see if we can put some meat on the bones, for want of a better description. Relationship expert and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford joins us on Talk. Hello, Lucy.
Hello there, Duncan.
Pleasure to talk to you. So just walk us through this research and then we can pick over whether or not it makes any sense.
Well, it's a really strong psychological principle, which is that when human beings go through the same experience together, it almost acts as a glue and solidifies that bond that you have. And it could be a negative experience, but it also works if you have a really positive experience. So this research, it's come out from Ashley Madison, the discretion-led dating website, shall we say?
Yeah.
And they ask their members, you know, are you going to watch the football and what does it feel like to watch it with your partner? And nearly 50% of people said, actually, yes, it really improves their relationship to watch a World Cup football match with their partner. I think it's because it creates these mutual memories. You're adding to your memory bank and it's just a really positive experience.
So you could watch, a couple could watch the match tonight and just kind of like bask in the warm glow of an England victory over Argentina. They have that shared moment, which is a moment of joy. And potentially that's not only good for the relationship, but let's cut to the chase here, Lucy. Does it mean if England beat Argentina, there might be a bit of jiggy-jiggy and nookie-nookie going on later?
So you want to see a spike in births in about 9 months' time?
Well, it's up to people whether or not they use contraception, but I'm just wondering whether or not, you know, there might be some lucky chaps across the United Kingdom, or certainly England tonight.
Ever the practical man, yes, I think you could be right. There could be some precautions taken. But yeah, it's about that sort of euphoria. On a more national level, I would fully expect to see a spike in the national mood tomorrow and for the next few weeks, and one might say that Andy Burnham is a very lucky general in that sense, to have that uplift in your mood because of having been through something very, very exciting, potentially quite tense, but ultimately very euphoric, because as you say, England will win.
And let's just extend this line of thinking. I mean, you're a psychotherapist, you're a relationship expert. Presumably, it's not just football. Any kind of shared experience as a couple, is that taken fundamentally as a good thing to keep your relationship healthy?
Absolutely. The problem when you get into a relationship, a long-term relationship, is it can get very stale. And actually doing things together, doing spontaneous, quite playful things together can be a really good way of reminding each other why you fell in love with each other and keeping that flame alive. Because we get into ruts, we get into grooves when we're in a relationship, and we get into habits, and you can start to take each other for granted. Whereas this is why date nights are so important for people who've had children. It's why you should always have a lock on your bedroom door, because and there are lots of parents who frown upon that because they worry that their children won't be able to access them. But that is the point. You want to have time together just to nourish that couple that you have created.
And are there any particular pastimes that bear fruit? I mean, you know, well, we're talking about obviously England against Argentina later, and you've just outlined brilliantly why it's important in a relationship to find time to spend with each other. I mean, can it be as simple as going for a walk in the park together, or is there other stuff that people should be thinking about?
Well, it can be, and actually walking in the park together is very useful when you have conversations to have, for example, because you're not facing each other, you're walking side by side, and it's a very gentle activity. So it can often give rise to some really useful, perhaps quite important conversations. But the interesting thing about the World Cup is that it's got a lot of emotion attached to it. And when we are with other people and we share that emotion, there is something physiologically about the bond that is intensified. It isn't just, oh, we did this nice thing, we went and had this nice meal. But if something hilarious happened at the meal, or if something very dramatic happens at the football match, it's that added emotion that really kind of solidifies the memory in the memory bank. So it's got to be an activity, but also something really powerful, which is why first early dates are so exciting, because you've got so much emotion attached to the date. And as you get into a relationship, then that emotion kind of fades a little bit. So it's always about trying to find activities where you're increasing the emotion as well, which of course, obviously also brings us back to sex, which is a great unifier.
It is indeed. Right, a couple of very quick questions. You watching the match tonight?
I will have to, yes. It will just be impossible not to.
Are you watching it at home, or are you going to go to the pub?
Go to the pub to have that joint experience.
Marvellous.
I think the euphoria of it will be very important.
All right, and very quickly, score prediction?
2-1 in extra time.
Oh, extra time, 2-1. Lucy Beresford, relationship expert and psychotherapist.
But not football expert.
No, not a football expert, no, but certainly a relationship expert. Lucy, thank you for your time. More World Cup chat in a few moments' time. It is England versus Argentina. Kick-off at 8 o'clock tonight. We'll get a further view on this from football commentator Ryan Bromelo, here next at Talk.
Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a massive £26,000.
The question is, what would you do with all that money?
I don't know. We've got a wedding.
I would buy a camper van.
Probably just like clothes, yeah.
Not on a big holiday. Immigrate.
So if you fancy getting your hands on £26,000 tax-free, here's all the details you need to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election.
Count Binface apparently is now 5-1. Brilliant. You know, so look, I mean, you know, if I were being flippant, I'd say Count Binface's campaign is now well and truly up and running, and Reform are struggling to put a lid on it.
Let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
10 minutes to 1. I'm Duncan Barks. I'm here through until 1 o'clock. Ian Collins here from 1 this afternoon here at Talk. We'll get Mr. Collins in shortly, find out what's going on. In the meantime, let's talk about today's big event. Not Prime Minister's questions that we had earlier. I'm talking about England versus Argentina. Gets underway at 8 o'clock tonight. Ryan Bromelo, football commentator, joins us once again on the show. Ryan, hello.
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Duncan.
Good to see you again. Good to talk to you again. There's a lot riding on tonight's match. I mean, not only where we are currently in the World Cup, but, you know, I'm thinking 1986, 1998. We need to win this.
Yeah, the stakes are huge. It's no mean feat to get to a World Cup semi-final, and they haven't really put in the best performance just yet. I mean, in the Norway game, they left the front gate open, they left the front door open, they had the alarm switched off, and Norway still couldn't let themselves in, you know. There was two big moments of luck in that game. Haaland has a goal disallowed for a shove, which I thought was a 50-50. And in the first half, Sørloth's through on goal, doesn't choose to play him in. And in England, they're back on terms just after that. So they got a little bit of luck. But look, the best sides use and make the most of their luck, and England did that on Saturday.
What do our viewers and listeners need to be looking out for tonight? I mean, who should we be worried about on the Argentinian side?
So if you think I need to tell them, Duncan, Lionel Messi, I think springs to mind on that front. And look, even at his age, it's hard to have a serious conversation about decline when Lionel Messi is enjoying the most prolific World Cup of his life. He's already worked his way through the repertoire. A hat-trick against Algeria on the opening day, then a free kick outside the box that roots the Jordan keeper in concrete to the spot, then a two-touch finish of just like beautiful simplicity against Cape Verde, and an equaliser against Egypt that keeps Argentina in the tournament. At 39, there are occasional reminders that he is that age. You know, there's a penalty that he misses against Egypt that he should do better with, and it's a big moment in the game. And then in the second half, he's clean through on goal, and the effort he has doesn't quite obey the picture in his head. But the problem is he's got a knack and a habit of reminding you that he's Lionel Messi. And although he's never faced England in 21 years and 205 caps, like anyone with a TV remote and a pair of eyes, they'll know everything that he brings. They'll know the mystery that he is. He's football's longest running exception. That's the best way of describing him.
And this isn't just about football. I mean, you know, there's a lot of national pride beyond football going on here because, of course, we've got 30,000, I think it's around 30,000 England fans going to Atlanta. We know there's going to be Argentinian fans there. We know some of the chanting will take place, and invariably the Falkland Islands will be mentioned, allegations or cheating, FIFA decisions in the past, etc., the hand of God. I mean, are we, and we don't want to see any violence going on, but are we thinking things might get a bit rough and ready with the fans?
Well, look, I mean, I think the focus should definitely be what's on the field. That episode of the Top Gear where they go to Argentina has been doing the rounds, hasn't it? When they're trying to get out of Argentina and they get belted by a mob that have sort of, you know, come around because of they were making fun, I think, of the Falklands. But I think on the pitch it could be chaotic. I've actually gone for a 3-3 tonight. I think there's going to be plenty of goals. I think you've got two teams that are very evenly matched, and you've got star quality in both ends as well. You've got Messi and you've got Bellingham, and both are having, you know, World Cups for the ages.
Right, Benedict Spence, who's been with me throughout the show, Conservative commentator, is a far bigger footy fan than me. You probably worked it out. Well, what are you looking forward to tonight, Benedict?
I mean, I have to say, whilst I do agree that it could be very chaotic, I'm not sure that it's going to be very good football, because I think on both sides you've got two, maybe three exceptional players. You know, Argentina have got Alvarez, McAllister and Messi, and England have got Kane and Bellingham, who are both sort of in the form of their lives. But apart from that, you've got 8 or 9 yard dogs on each team. And to be honest, that's kind of what you want when it's England versus Argentina. You want people that are going to be going toe-to-toe with each other. But I'm not necessarily convinced that the quality of the football is going to be very good. Last night we had Spain versus France, and that was very much about the quality on show. Tonight, it's one of those where I think you've got players who are quite good at winding each other up. A lot of them play in the Premier League as well. I think that there's going to be a lot of needle, and I think also if it goes on a little while without there being a breakthrough, the fans are going to start to get into each other, and I think that the atmosphere could get quite tense, especially, of course, because it's probably Messi's last World Cup. There's that added pressure on Argentina to do well, and that added incentive for England to just take something off the Argentines. Plus, we owe them for Maradona and the hand of God. It's about time we actually gave them a bloody nose back.
They've got it coming. I mean, Ryan, the quality of football, as Benedict has just outlined there, do you think we're going to see anything special, or is it going to be pretty poor?
Well, no, I think Argentina's campaign so far has been built on hunger and grit and desire. And you're not going to beat Argentina by asking who wants it more, because that's a conversation that Argentina have been winning all tournaments. I think for us, it's about asking them football questions. You know, it's an aging side. They're vulnerable in the wide areas. Neither right back is 100% fit either. Switzerland got lots of joy down that side. Cape Verde also showed their teeth. And I think from our perspective as well, if we can try and disrupt the supply between Rodrigo de Paul and Lionel Messi, where that service usually comes, then you might limit that threat. On paper, our midfield is far stronger than theirs. So look, they've got every chance. They've got every chance on paper to take themselves to a World Cup final. They just need to show up on the night.
All right. And a score prediction?
I said 3-3. I think I'll go to extra time. England wins on pens.
Yeah, and the last time we spoke, which I think was on Monday, did you say you were planning to watch it in a pub in Fulham?
I am, yeah. I give the King's Arms a shout out. I'm giving it another one there. Yeah, and I'm going to watch it with my dad tonight, but that's the final destination, hopefully. So get yourself down there, Duncan, if you're free on Sunday.
All right. Happy to support boozers right across the United Kingdom. What's the name of the pub again?
It's the King's Arms, Fulham, and they're doing £4 pints on Sunday.
Beautiful. Listen, good to talk to you. Thank you, Ryan Bromelo, football commentator. Benedict Spence, have I asked you where you're watching the match today?
No, you've not, but I will be watching the pub as well. I'll be probably in the Fenton Arms in Vauxhall. That's where I'll be. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting.
It's going to be good. I can't decide. You see, I have two pubs within a 30-second walk / stagger of where I live. One's quite a trendy kind of craft beer bar, which is all right. That's called the Little Monster Tap.
Yeah.
The other one is a proper old-school kind of wet pub called the Eastgate, both in Chichester, and they've got it on as well. As I was saying earlier to Jeremy Carl, I love the atmosphere, but when you've been sitting in radio studios with big headphones on your head over the last 30 years, sometimes your hearing's not as good as it used to be. So I might just end up on the sofa with an Indian and a bottle of Shiraz, Ian Collins.
Yeah. I might be with a Frenchman and a bottle of Shiraz.
How many Frenchmen do you know?
I'm sure it's 33. Yeah. I will be anywhere where I can sit down.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is not an age thing, because I've always had this. Shall I plug myself in?
Oh, you're not in?
You can hear me.
Yeah. It's not the chair we're plugging in, it's your microphone.
Some have suggested it should be the chair. I've never been, football match, gigs, I want to sit down. I don't want to stand up anywhere, frankly.
Right.
I want to sit down. Football match, in particular. Went to the pub, they said, we've paid for 3 tables, this is the last match. Brilliant, we can sit down. Everybody stood up.
Right.
So, what are you standing up for?
Yeah, well, is this an age thing?
Standing. No, that's what I'm saying. Since I was 18.
Oh, since you're 18?
Yeah. I went years ago. I went to see Big Country at Wembley. That was the first
good
gig.
band.
Good band. First band I ever went to. And I thought, why am I standing up? I've just paid for a seat. Why am I standing up? This is insane.
Right, so you're not going to go to the pub because you'd probably have to stand up.
No, as you go around a mate's house, it's got quite a sizable garden, and that will involve. But a couple of the guys there, even in the garden furniture setup, stood up to watch the last game. Well, sit down.
But can you? I mean, I don't look. I mean,
it's the most middle-class old